you have any somewhere? Somebody? Bueller? All right, thank you.
Sorry, normally you have them.
You know, it's probably those crazy judges that sit up here periodically. Look at that, man.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. We'll give them right back to you. All right. Got to make sure we get on the right page here. I haven't done this very often. Rules of order for public hearing zoning matters. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request the parcels of property which are the subject of the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for a presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced but may be extended by majority vote, provided they are expanded equally for the proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the microphone and give their name and address to the city clerk. Do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. With that, that's my favorite part. Do you have an agenda? Public hearing. The first one under public hearings is 5553 Peachtree Road et al.
Mayor and Council, this is a variance case in which the applicant, Perimeter Commercial Real Estate, is requesting 12 variances for the redevelopment of existing property located at 5523, 5537, 5539, 5553, and 5565 Peachtree Road, 5 parcels that are being assembled with a single building and parking. The proposed building is the existing Whaley Machine Workshop with 28,640 square feet that would be converted from its previous use as a warehouse to an office right across the street from City Hall almost. The site consists of 5 parcels and about an acre and a half with there are 2 one-story buildings on it now, the largest of which is the Whaley Machine Workshop. And then there's a second building, Happy Tate's Auto Service, which has been purchased or would be purchased and connected with the same parcel through a parcel combination. And the applicant proposes an adaptive reuse of the existing Whaley Machine building to repurpose it into 6 office commercial tenants and outdoor seating in the rear. The building renovations include removing large amounts of the existing brick and block facade to install new windows and glazed roll-up doors. The applicant proposes to gut the interior and install new HVAC, plumbing, and electrical systems, a new roof, skylights, and interior finishes. Site work includes grading of the parking areas, installation of 2 underground stormwater management facilities, construction of retaining walls, curbs, and streetscape to meet the city requirements in the UDO. The site plan shows 2 curb cuts accessing parking lots, one on the east and one on the west of the property. Although 111 parking spaces are required, the applicant proposes 80 parking spaces. So that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed in the variances. There are, as I said, 12 variances. The first is a variance from section 230-2A requiring a 20-foot setback in the rear yard, whereas the existing rear yard is really nothing, given the configuration of the building and the property. Unless the applicant is successful in getting a land lease from the Southern Railroad to enlarge the rear area. In that case, which we don't know, the variance might not be needed, but we'll have to assume that it won't occur, so they need a variance on that. Variance number 2, concerning section 230-2A as well, has to do with a setback in the front yard, which is required to be 15 feet in the village commercial zone, whereas the existing front yard setback is approximately 12 feet. The next variance, number 3, concerns the same table, space dimensions table, but has to do with the fact that they don't meet the maximum impervious surface. The ordinance allows a maximum of 80% impervious surface, and it appears that there's more on the site than 80%. Variance 4 is kind of complementary to that because we require a 20% open space allotment on the property. And just as they cannot meet the maximum of 80%, they cannot meet the minimum of 20% open space, subject to the condition that we're recommending that they consider, in that case, using pervious paving surface for 50% of the parking lot if he is unable to acquire the land lease from Southern Railway. The fifth variance, which we're recommending approval of, again, is section 320-28 to reduce the requirement for a 10-foot landscape strip along the street frontages to a 5-foot wide landscape strip. Variance 6, we're recommending approval of section 230-33A1. Has to do with the proportion and scale of the building facade to allow the facade design that is pretty much prevalent on the building and proposed by the applicant. They're adding some windows, but they're not varying the facade horizontally or vertically, so they don't meet this requirement. Approval of variance 7, section 230-30B1 requires a minimum interior floor to ceiling height of 18 feet for a building located on a storefront street, Peachtree Road. Again, this is an existing building. They would have to tear off the roof and raise the ceiling and the height of the building to meet that. Recommending approval. Recommending approval of variance 8 from section 250-2A that requires a minimum number of off-street parking spaces. As I stated, they would require a total of 111. Recommending approval subject to the condition that the applicant increase the number of compact spaces to 25% of the total, and then prepare a rideshare program for employees that will result in 15% of the employees either carpooling or using public transportation by the year 2020. I've given them access to a rideshare program that's already going in the Atlanta Regional Commission that they can take advantage of to reduce their need for parking. Variance 9, we're recommending approval of variance 9 from section 320-21A4. That has to do with the requirement that the parking lot has a 5-foot planting strip for head-to-head parking. I believe they're planning to have a 3-foot wide planting strip for their head-to-head parking. Approval of variance 10 from section 320-3A1 requires a development site to maintain or provide a minimum tree density of 100 dBH per acre. We're recommending approval of that variance subject to the applicant's compliance with section 320-40 to provide alternative compliance with the tree density. In other words, they have to contribute funds to the tree bank. We're recommending denial of their request for variance 11 from section 250-7B. That variance would be of the provision that says to the extent practical, adjacent parking lots serving non-residential or mixed-use buildings shall be interconnected and shall provide for future interconnectivity. However, if the mayor and council prefers to approve this variance as well, staff recommends that that approval be subject to the following condition. Number 1, the applicant shall provide a stub connection to the property line that may be used in the future to provide an interparcel driveway connection with the adjacent parcel to the northeast, which is 5571 Peachtree Road. We believe it's possible for them to create the interparcel connection to the south. We're also recommending denial of variance 12 from section 350-33C, requirements for interparcel access that requires that sidewalks and parking lots serving adjacent lots shall be interconnected to provide continuous driveway connections and pedestrian connections between adjoining lots and streets. We're recommending denial. However, if the mayor and council prefers to approve this variance, the same condition is recommended that the applicant provide a stub connection to the property line that may be used in the future to provide an interparcel driveway connection to the adjacent parcel to the northeast, meaning 5571 Peachtree Road. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Garrett. John, do you have anything?
Nothing to add.
Very good. All right, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of that to hear from the public. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request, please come to the microphone. Remember, we'll have 10 minutes for this section total.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Robert Pond. My address is 1992 Avon Court. Is that better? My name is Robert Pond. My address is 1992 Avon Court, which is in Huntley Hills, and I represent the developer. We appreciate your time and your consideration tonight for our project. The Whaley Machine Company building was first developed in downtown Chamblee in 1965 by the Whaley family, and they've been running their...
Sorry, I'm working on it.
They've been running their metal fabrication business since the mid-60s in this building, which is a 28,000-foot warehouse building that's been operating in a heavy industrial capacity. This is a project that we've been working on for the previous approximately 11 months, working with the Whaley estate to dispose of their property and exploring different concepts for what we could do to take this property for a higher and better use as to the new zoning and vision for downtown Chamblee redevelopment. The challenge with this site is the site is very limited. It's a 1 acre site. It's a 28,000 square foot building. Can anybody hear me?
Just speak up if you can. I don't know what else to do about it.
That's fine. Currently the site has about a 1-to-1 parking ratio as is. So in the previous 11 months, we've been working to assemble property both the south and to the north to add to the parking ratio to provide for a potential higher and better use for the property. So the
Microphone.
Oh, there.
Does yours work?
Are we on the right page? Mr. Pond?
Yes, sir.
You need to speak. Yeah. Is this better? There you go. Yes. Wonderful. The project that we're proposing, we're calling the Whaley Machine Workshops, which is a Class A adaptive reuse loft office concept, which is intended to take the Whaley Machine Company building as its base warehouse building, completely gut, renovate it, cut out large parts of the facade, install storefront glass, and completely clean up and to lease out to a variety of different office tenants in the downtown Chamblee market. As part of putting this project together, it's been an assemblage of a total of 5 different land parcels amongst 3 different ownerships, including the Whaley family estate, Poppy Tapes Automotive to the south, and to the north, the Georgia Pallet Company. We undertook this to really make this parcel as large as we possibly could. As you'll see in the next slide, which is our most current site plan, it's a very restrictive parcel. The current building backs up and has a 0 lot line with the Norfolk Southern Railroad property. You can see to the south and to the north we've added additional land to add to a potential parking ratio. The current building sits right on the property line. As you'll see to the rear of the building, as Gary mentioned, we're currently working with Norfolk Southern Railroad on a proposed land lease. And our intention, this is undeveloped land that's owned by the railroad, our intention is to turn this land into green space to add as a landscaped amenity for both the city as well as the prospective office tenants. That's all I have really. I'll reserve the rest of my time for any questions or follow-up. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Very good. Does council have any questions of the staff and or the applicant? Nope. Do you have this is a public hearing, so you can come up and speak. Are you speaking in favor or opposed?
I'm actually an adjacent representative.
Yes, sir, I know. But
I really, it's just a question.
okay, well, this is probably not the right forum to answer your question, but you're more than welcome to come up and ask it. It's just, I don't make the rules, I just follow them.
The question is variants 11 and 12, and just would like to get an understanding of what that is, what the interconnectivity is. I know that it was recommended for denial by the planning department, but I was just would like a clarification of what that is.
Very good. And we'll try to cover that here in just a moment.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Oh, yeah, and sir, we need you to state your name, please, and address to the city clerk. Thank you, John.
Name is Kim Chamness. I represent property between 5575 and 5602. I reside in Decatur, Georgia, 209 Coventry Road.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, very good. So then we'll move on. The council have any questions of the staff and or the applicant?
That's something to be expected. I will start with a question for the applicant, which is we had, when we met, we discussed the dumpster and location adjacent to the sidewalk. And is there any ability or progress made towards moving that away from the pedestrian area?
It's something that we're continuing to explore. It's, as of right now, between a day and a half ago and right now, we have not found a potential solution for it. We will continue to look into it, but the current location of the dumpster is the last version of the site plan that we looked at.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question for Gary, and that is, it appears that the approval of the land lease would essentially negate some of the conditions or requirements. And I was just curious as to the thought process going into that, given that it's probably going to be a revocable land lease, and it's going to have a term in making that, whereas the zoning, what we're looking at doing is perpetual.
The variance recommendations ignore that.
That it's revocable.
Ignore the land lease. In other
Correct.
words, there is no land lease. We can't rely on one, and as you say, it may not last. So I made recommendations as if it does not exist and will not exist.
But you simultaneously provided conditions that if a land lease were to be acquired, then you recommend a different set of conditions. So just trying to understand the theory with it being revocable.
I'm just saying that I think we should take the position that he doesn't have the adequate rear yard setback. He doesn't have the adequate impervious surface to open space ratio. And I guess we can look at specific thing. I'm not sure which item you're referring to.
Yeah, Darren, if you could point to that, 'cause I'm trying to find it myself.
Ambiguous for you, but I think it would be appropriate to assume a land lease is just gravy. If they happen to get it, then it may reduce the need for the variance, but we don't know that now.
And that's, I'm trying to find it right now, but that's particularly my question. If it reduces the need for the variance, how does it do that and that it's revocable? So in other words, it can be taken back at any time by the owner.
Right, and then he'd be in violation.
So what they're
If it was a
saying,
99-year lease, maybe it's okay. I don't know. I'm assuming that we're not going to see that lease in the time frame for making a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
other questions?
I have a question for the applicant. It's a minor question. On the colored drawing of the proposal, you don't show any telephone poles, but then on the black and white line drawing, there are telephone poles, so you are going to bury them, bury the tower, aren't you?
Well, we are not, no.
Oh. Interesting. Is that allowed?
Under the circumstances, no. That's the difference between what I understood and what we have. So we're recommending and enforcing the ordinance to say that underground utilities would be required.
Okay.
Including, then they put in the streetscape, street trees, street lights. If they are unable to do that, there's going to have to be some concession made by city council at a later date. We'll have to agree to contribute to the streetscape fund for the city underground utilities.
Well, that's a great point. I'd particularly not like to see it come back a second time. I think there needs to be some clarity at this point. It sounds like the applicant is not prepared to bury the power lines. However, they haven't asked for any kind of a variance to not do so, which would assume that you plan to bury the power lines.
We had not planned to bury the power lines. It frankly had not come up. Frankly, it was potentially a miss in the review process.
Okay, just so that you know, whatever action the council takes to move forward, there hasn't been requested a variance from the ordinance that requires you to put power lines under line. Just want to make that clear.
That's understood.
Okay, very good. Other questions? Gary, I have a concern with parking. We continually talk about the parking need specifically in this area. A lot of the on-street parking that we continue to put on for other developments and try to add on-street parking potential of a future restaurant, retail that's happening in the area. I have a real concern that when we allow for parking variances in this district, you're going to have people that are working there parking in the street, on-street parking, which could otherwise be used for other uses. How do we, we continue to just add more demand on parking we don't have?
Well, we're recommending a rideshare program, and I think that it might be more than just this property that needs to go into it. And the city might be able to coordinate that with ARC. So we've got transit down the street. If there was some sort of a van service or method by which occupants could share rides to the transit station.
I think that sounds great. That's awesome. I'm all about TOD. I've been pushing for it. I've been trying to help facilitate, walkable, transit-oriented development. But quite frankly, the point is that most of the folks that are going there to work are going to park out of the street somewhere where somebody would like to park to go to the new restaurant that's in town. And so, explain to me more about this rideshare program. How does it work? Is it enforceable? And how would you enforce it?
Right. It would be very difficult to make it stick. The only way we could do that would be to ensure that they have provided the publicity to their employees and that the employees are aware of the program. If it doesn't work, then obviously there's not something we can do other than to say, if you haven't met 15% by 2020, we'll shut you down.
That's not going to happen. We just know that. I mean, we've been there. And the point is, it's just good. We've got restaurants. We've got folks that are coming in this area, opening up retail. We're stressed on parking. I just want to point out for the record,
Yes, sir.
I think we need to be more cognizant about approving parking variances with wonderful ideas, and I don't mean that facetiously, wonderful ideas about ride sharing, and we're working on trails in order to try to get people to ride bikes. We've got developments that are going in, and people are putting showers in Class A office space so people can ride their bikes, but quite frankly, people are still going to get in their car and drive, and they're going to park on the street until we find a parking alternative, and to just exacerbate that parking issue is problematic for me.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There does need to be interparcel connection, though, and that helps to provide shared parking when that's possible.
Well, but is there any requirement of a shared parking area? Interparcel connectivity, from the way I understand it, is to help the flow of traffic on the road that's in front and to help alleviate any, as much as possible pedestrian auto conflict. But I don't see anything about a shared parking agreement. I mean, a shared parking agreement, you don't have to have interparcel connectivity. I know you're the expert on this, and I don't mean to make it sound like I don't know more than you do on this, but I know how I could have interparcel connectivity in a sidewalk or even cut across the grass and hop the bushes to get to another spot. Interparcel connectivity doesn't have anything to do, in my mind, with shared parking agreement, and I don't see anything in here that talks about a required shared parking agreement. Okay. I just think we're exacerbating a parking problem, and I've got a real concern about it. And others have brought it to my attention as well, others that are developing in our town core that are looking to bring other uses that might otherwise not make it if they don't have proper parking.
Well, I'll offer one more suggestion. I did the calculation. It's approximately 8,000 square feet. If he did what in his building, like Gary Matthews did in his, he could take 8,000 square feet out of his building, convert it to parking,
Right.
and thereby reduce the parking demand and increase the supply.
Sure.
That would be one other alternative for council to consider.
Sure, and I think that was a great alternative that those folks were able to work into their pro forma. I don't know what these guys' pro forma is and what they plan to do, but again, I'm just looking at your recommendations and appreciate what you do for the city, but pointing out to those here and to the council before they make the decision. I have a huge concern, and I continue to have a concern for 15 years since I've sat up here with creating parking crunches in this area. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, so back to the interparcel connectivity. This applicant can only provide the stub on his property that if the properties adjacent to him don't continue the drive-through, then the interparcel connectivity doesn't exist anyways.
Well, Leslie, I'll just point out, we've had this discussion on several occasions. If you don't put it in,
I'm not saying no.
We're about 35, 36 spaces
Okay.
short, is that?
The question I have is about the parking. It says in the write-up, it says that they require 111 parking spaces, and it says in brackets 54 is provided. But when I'm looking at the site plan, it says 40 and 35, which my math is 75. So I'm just wondering which one is it?
That would be a good question for the applicant to address.
Good, Mr.
My understanding was that we're 80 spaces.
The site plan that you have in front of you is a revised and amended site plan. My apologies if I didn't make that clear, that we've been working on since we submitted the application. So we've been making adjustments to the parking to try to accommodate other important elements that we heard loud and clear from a variety of different council members as well as staff, including on the north parking lots, making an attempt to, for instance, add in the head-to-head open space between the parking. Okay. So we've made some adjustments. We've moved the dumpster from where it was originally on the left side up to the right side, and we've been doing our best to accommodate a variety of requirements through the UDO in terms of open space, parking, et cetera, and balancing those the best way that we can with this project and the extremely tight site that we're working on.
So Gary, that opens a question for me, and John, if you got another question, I'll get back to you. Am I understanding the applicant to say that they plan to develop something differently than you reviewed? Is that what I understand him to say?
What I just heard is that there have been changes to the site plan. And the site plan that has been put before you is the site plan that I've reviewed.
So that you know, the staff has not reviewed what you're talking about. And so if they have not, technically speaking, the council can only move on what has been reviewed and provided to the council through the staff.
Understood.
You know, those changes, while great, are not, they're not the official record of what's gone to the staff and then come to the council.
Understood.
Okay. Other questions?
Can you speak to staff's potential recommendation about removing some building square footage in exchange for parking, similar to the...
That would be, Mr. Pond, if you could come back up, please.
Would that be, do you believe that might be feasible?
I think that would be a serious challenge to our project based on a number of economic factors. I'll go ahead and tell you that we're looking at a total of approximately a $5 million investment in this project. When you look at everything across the board, it's a significant cost for a relatively small amount of square footage in the grand scheme of things, and having to knock out any amount of the building, whether it be 5,000, 9,000, 12,000 square feet, I think it would significantly potentially derail this project. I'd also like to speak to the parking and the need for the variance. Mayor Clarkson, I do hear what you say loud and clear, and I've heard some of the same things and some of the same concerns that you're expressing. Our 75 total parking spaces to 28,000 square feet is very close to a 3 per 1,000 parking ratio. Now code is a 4 per 1,000 parking ratio, so of course we are underneath that, but we feel very confident based on the type of tenants that we are speaking to lease up to the space, based on the type of creative loft space that we're going to be developing, that 3 per 1,000 is an extremely adequate ratio to park this project on site when it's fully leased up. So we don't have the concerns about not being able to park it and having a significant spill out. The other piece of that is we're on Peachtree Road. We do not have the on-street parking directly adjacent to the building. So for us, that really wouldn't be a viable option anyways.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Pond, I just want to clarify from my own understanding. Going back to the burying of power lines, are you saying that you weren't aware that that was going to be needed, or are you saying that you're coming back to us later to ask for another variance? Or
I'm saying we were not made aware that that was needed. Thank you.
Anybody else? Very good. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 4401 Chamblee Dunwoody Road, Holiday Inn. We've had the ARB has suggested a deferral, and we've received a letter from the applicant for request to defer till the October work session. Everybody okay with that? We're pretty good with the motion on that, if somebody wants to.
Motion to accept the request for deferral to the October work session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All right, discussion?
Yeah, just real quick. Is it, I'm sensitive to the fact that people keep coming out to the meeting to be able to voice their concerns and to be involved in this process, and the project keeps being deferred. So I just would like to express my concern that I really hope that the applicant can get the project together and we can hear this and have a full discussion on it when everyone's made time out of their schedules to be here to have that conversation.
Anyone else?
And how does the variance request, the height?
That's a completely different
Okay, I just
issue
wanted to make
altogether.
sure.
This is for the DCI that was submitted, and they requested deferral. So we have a motion second then to defer this item to the October work session. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right, so we have a proposed amendment to the official zoning map, Peachtree Boulevard. Once again, I'll pause at this moment before we move forward with the public hearing and note that there have been discussions, I've had discussions with a couple of you that brought to my attention there could be a need for a deferral on this item, or possibly a desire to defer this item to a future date rather than going through the public hearing and moving it to a second read. Anyone?
I'd like to make a motion to defer to the September City Council work session. Second that.
Okay, you
Second.
all right, so is there discussion on this item? We have a motion second then to defer the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the official zoning map, Peachtree Boulevard, until the September work session. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. All right, we have proposed UDO text amendments. Take it away, Gary.
Yes, sir. These are 4 remaining amendments from the longer list that we've been working on for some time that are now at the point of public hearing and the second read on Tuesday night. The 4 text amendments are 2016 TA12 regarding the tree preservation ordinance to allow 20% disturbance of the critical root zone of specimen trees. This adjustment from 10% to 20% was reviewed by our arborists and found to be common practice in the Atlanta area. There's also a update to Addendum 2, which is the detailed guidelines for the buffer landscape and tree preservation ordinance. This is not
Gary, excuse me real quick. Y'all, I'm having a difficult time hearing, and I'm imagining those people that are sitting really close to you are having a difficult time hearing. If you would please just excuse yourself outside before you have your conversations, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Gary.
No problem. The second is 2016 TA13, which is an edit to Chapter 240, permitting car rental establishments in the airport zoning district. There is a Hertz car rentals agency already there, and it seems to be consistent with the, the purpose of the airport. So we believe it's appropriate to amend the Unified Development Ordinance to permit such car rental agencies on the airport property and the airport zoning district. 2016 TA14, the very minor amendment consisting of an edit to portion of Chapter 250 to correct an erroneous cross-reference. It has no substantive effect at all. 2016 TA15 is the 4th text amendment to Chapter 240 that would revise the previous text amendment proposed for townhouse regulations. Requires a certain amount of commercial space to be provided in the larger townhome developments and further limits the commercial property to being on the major thoroughfares. Second part of this makes a correction to the text related to the appropriate driveway access from public streets. That's the end of my report to you, sir.
Thank you very much. John, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed UDO text amendments? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Council have any questions?
I have one question. Is larger townhome developments defined somewhere?
Well, there are townhome developments that occur in two situations most often. One would be such as the village residential or in the corridor commercial. Those are the larger ones in the sense that they can have more height, like I think it's 45 feet. If they're in the NR3, that's a smaller variation because their height is limited to 35 feet. They're going to be smaller units. Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Is that something you'd like clarified by zoning district rather than the use of larger?
I think there actually should be some sort of definition. Some sort of guidelines that automatically speak to that so that nobody has any questions upon application of what larger townhome development means.
I think, excuse me, text amendment, it says, except in the NR3 zoning district. When it says that, it means that smaller ones are not included in this provision. I just use the term smaller and larger for convenience.
Okay.
But what it means is any townhome except in the NR3
Okay.
would have to have this commercial set aside.
Okay.
Sounds pretty fine. All right, Tom?
So I'm not sure, I can't remember if we on council discussed this or not, but was a option to create an incentive to create commercial explored, or was it just black or white? If you're larger, you have to have some commercial space?
The way the text amendment reads is it's not a matter of you get more density or anything. That's really not something that's limited except by site coverage and height. So there's not an incentive to add the commercial, it's a requirement.
Okay. I would be in favor of there being more of an incentive approach to that, because I think we would all like it, but I think it needs to be location specific in order to make sure that the commercial succeeds, rather than actually a requirement that will certainly probably see a variance request with every transaction.
Okay, in the previous discussion, my understanding was that you wanted to make this on a major street and that would help to focus this requirement in certain areas where we have larger streets, more opportunity for marketing commercial space. So that was my concession, I guess, to that idea. But if you have further suggestions, I'm all ears.
That was my understanding as well. All right, anything else? Very good. Everyone want to move on?
Motion to exit the public hearing.
Second.
Very good. Tom made that motion. Good in here. Motion and second then to exit executive session. All those in favor? Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is. Public hearing. All those in favor? Thank you. That was unanimous. Everybody want to go to executive session? Oh, wait, that's later. Needed. Sorry about that. All right. We'll call the work session to order. I don't believe we have any announcements or presentations. Staff actions items, city clerk approval of minutes. We have city council public hearing work session, July 14. No, nothing. 1B, city council regular meeting, July 19.
Mayor Clarkson.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, guess none of them are working tonight unless you write up on them. I do have a correction to the minutes for this meeting, and I apologize to the council. Under development, item number 3. There was a friendly amendment, and I listed Councilmember Mock, and it should have been Councilmember Mesa. My apologies.
Yeah, I get those two mixed up all the time.
Those are fighting words.
Well, I knew that you were presiding, and therefore it was wrong. I didn't make a substitute motion, but it will be corrected in the minutes.
And seeing as how he was the presiding officer, that would be really bad.
Do you need clarity on the trackside motion? Are you comfortable with what's there?
What's in the minutes is actually accurate.
Perfect.
Very good. Anything else? All right, thank you, Amy. City manager, we've got a discussion about the rail trail plan extension conceptual design study briefing.
Yes, sir. Jim Somerville will step forward and present the presenter.
Present the presenter. We have like a pre-presenting before the presenter. So like I introduced you and you introduced Jim and Jim. We just go around the room.
I'm just hoping I can work this.
Right. Aren't we all?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing the consultants for the rail trail study. extension study. They're here tonight to present sort of a brief overview of the recommendations and findings. We're seeking council's direction on how you want to proceed with the draft study and its recommendations, and we request that your approval to transmit the draft study to ARC to fulfill our obligations for that contract. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Carlos Perez with Perez Planning and Design.
Thank you, Jim.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Happy to be here to share with you our findings for this process.
We're happy to have you here.
Great, thank you. And with me tonight is also Mark Holmberg, project manager with Ethan Lineback, and also Patrick Peters. Who's
See, I knew it. I knew you'd be introducing more people. Okay, your turn.
Well, they'll be there just in case we have any questions.
So it kind of stops there.
Correct. So as you know, we've been working on this process now for a little bit. If you go on to the next slide. And it started with, well, this is what we're going to be sharing with you tonight. It's going to be an overview of the process very quickly, share with you how that process has led to this vision that we created in partnership with you and the community, and then very quickly get into action items. And we've broken those action items down into 3 elements here: a 100-year action plan, 100-day action plan, a 1-year action plan, and a 5-year action plan. And then we'll open it up for discussion. So we started this process looking at existing conditions, getting to know the corridor, understanding that this project is part of a larger whole, part of many previous planning documents, so we wanted to be mindful of those. And very quickly started with public engagement, interviewing you, as well as stakeholders along the corridor. Had various public engagement strategies, everything from many one-on-one meetings with trail neighbors, as well as other stakeholders, and led to a series of concept plans and alternatives that we've shared with folks, and then finally to our recommendations that we'll share with you this evening. And so what this process has led to is this linear system, this linear park system that will essentially extend from the existing Keswick Trail all the way to near Mount Zion Cemetery. And what we believe is that this system, if you go to the next slide, will really help to continue to catalyze and lead to the redevelopment of many of the parcels currently within the mid-city character area. And so what we've done is we've taken this vision and we've broken it down to implementable smaller pieces, which is the next slide. Total cost about $14.6 million. And we've broken that down into a series of implementable costs that you'll see in subsequent slides. So let's get into the 100-day action plan. What we're recommending is that first council consider to adopt and approve the plan. And what that does is it opens you up to some funding that ARC is going to provide in spring 2017. They're going to do a call for funding for the Transportation Alternative Program. And so by adopting this, it allows you to give you a stronger footing for that, be considered for that funding. We also recommend that the city continue to work with MARDO, with Trackside, and Peachtree Malone Lofts to finalize the agreements on how to get the trail through that corridor based on the recommendations. And so that specifically deals with access to trackside development, the relocation of the dog run, as well as relocation of visitor parking. And what we're recommending is the image there that you see on the right-hand side, which says that the dog run would be just north of the easement. We would look to impact 23 spaces, 8 of which could be re-provided in their property through parallel parking, and the rest that MARTA would have on their parking garage. We would also recommend that council consider allocating some funds to begin the design of this process of this dog run, so it matches with the timing of trackside development, and also work with MARTA to develop and begin the design of this as well. So this is again, 100-day action plan that we're recommending. If we go to the 1-year action plan, we recommend that the city look to either hire a full-time grants writer or a grants consultant. And we've identified a series of grants that we'll share with you in a moment that we think that this grant writer can help with. We also recommend that the city coordinate with ARC for this Transportation Alternative Program that you'll see in subsequent slides. They will have a call to paper it, or a call to the project essentially in the spring of 2017. As part of this as well, within the first year, look to secure access with MARTA to that stormwater detention pond facility. We've already started discussion with MARTA about what that might look like and coordinating that with them as well. Within the first year, look at also constructing the dog run to be in tandem with trackside development. We also can recommend that council consider creating zoning incentives along the corridor to help you have this trail built through developers. And there's a series of zoning incentives that we've included in the report for council to consider. And also work with, there's another segment in the corridor that can be relatively easy to implement, which is the guardian storage. We have spoken to that developer and they are interested in including that segment within their property, and that's something that can also happen within the first year. Art is something that we heard very loudly through the process, so we also recommend council consider putting some funds for that in the first year as well. And then the last piece of this, the 5-year action plan looks at some heavy implementation of many of the corridors, including the Peachtree Malone Loft easement, trail, the guardian storage component as well, and then continue to work with other property owners to secure access to that corridor. Actually, I forgot to mention one thing, if we want to go back to the 1-year action plan. And that's the idea of working with residents to create a 501c3 for this project. And what that does is that allows the city to leverage some of the philanthropic dollars that are prevalent in the metro area, and you'll see that in a second. But that can be a great way to continue the momentum of the project as well as leverage some of the public funds that could be allocated to this project. And as part of the 5-year action plan, we can encourage council to also look at continuing to implement art along the corridor and allocate funding for that. So what does this look like, if we go to the next slide, what does this look like from a funding and implementation standpoint? We identified a series of funding sources for the city to consider, and there's some interesting funding out there. For example, the Dermatology Association has money for shelters, right? So is that some funding sources that the city can look into, again, with this grant writer. The Transportation Alternative Program that I've noted that ARC is looking to provide spring 2017 is about $7.2 million, and something that we think this project could benefit from. Also on this slide is this idea of the philanthropic givings. The Metro Atlanta area benefits from over $500 million a year on philanthropic giving. So having a 501c3 as part of this project can help the city leverage those opportunities. So the last slide looks at an implementation timeline. And essentially says if the city, for example, were to implement $1.1 million a year on the implementation of the project, it could take around 16 years to build. So that's one long-term scenario. If you look at a shorter scenario, assuming that the city considers securing a extraordinary funding source, taking into consideration the time that it takes to secure the funding and then design and build the project, it could be built around 5.5 years to 6 years. And then in between looks at pay-as-you-go as well as grants or any other opportunities, and that can range anywhere from that's 3 or 4 years upwards to 16 plus, based on what is received. So with that, is a brief overview of the report, and look forward to your questions and answers.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Beautiful thing. Go ahead, Derek.
All right, I'm curious about some of the numbers, particularly related to the cost for the amphitheater and for the dog park, and more curious how you arrived at $287,830 for the dog run. That seems quite expensive.
Good question. The challenge there is that, as you know, that pond is pretty steep. So to create the space for the dog run, we're having to push that dog run out and create a pretty large retaining wall. And so that's where the costs are included.
So that still sounds very, very high for a retaining wall.
And there's also a contingency built into that, right? We have a 20%, these are planning level costs.
Okay.
So we have to have, there's a 20% contingency built in these planning level costs.
And then given that the cost for the amphitheater is over a third of the budget, essentially, or proposed budget, has there been any thought given to maybe some alternative designs that were less costly? Or are you really looking at that as a hallmark of the entire trail system?
Based on conversations with some of your colleagues and as well from the neighborhood, we heard that being something that residents wanted to see. So as part of this effort, it's something that we included as part of it, and we think that could benefit, the space could benefit from. It also has the potential to create some funding associated with programming that can happen in that event. But to your point, this is a conceptual design. If this were to move forward, it would go through its own design process, would have a public engagement as part of it, as well as more detailed costing, and I think that's when you can really start looking at moving things around.
And that would fall into that disaster mitigation grant funding potentially as well, right?
Unfortunately, the amphitheater may not fit into that, or this space may not fit into that because there's no historical flooding in this area, right? That's affecting private property. The pre-disaster mitigation grant is usually allocated for that kind of situation. But we included this as part of the study because it's something that the city might be able to use in other projects, offsetting costs elsewhere, allowing you to allocate costs to this.
Okay, so it's not deep because it's a flood basin, that it's deep just because it's deep and there's been a creek running through it.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple. On the outreach that you did for the stakeholders, did you focus on the folks that reside down in the Mid-City District, or did you advertise for stakeholders from the citizen standpoint citywide?
It's a good question. We worked with the city on,
It's all right, none of them seem to be working tonight.
We worked with the city on advertising it, and I believe it was advertised through email blasts. So I'd have to defer to the city on.
Gary, who did we reach out to?
We put the same steering committee kind of framework that we had used in the comprehensive plan, UDO. So we had some in the south portions of the city.
So it was citywide?
It was citywide.
Okay, very good. This may be a can of worms, but I just want to get clarity on a couple pieces with regard to the dog park.
Sure.
It is my understanding, I'm going to ask my questions to the staff. If you can answer, by all means, chime in. The current dog park that Peachman Loan Lofts has is on city-owned property, is that correct?
It's on property that they own, but the city has an easement.
Okay, so we have an easement to it. Is it then an obligation of ours to provide a replacement for that in order to be able to have access to it? Are we compelled to negotiate the use of that space?
There's an agreement that's tied to the easement that says the only way the easement is effective is that the city takes responsibility for relocating any structures that were there before we use it for the trail.
Well, does that agreement specify that the replacement amenity be privately owned by Peachman Loan Lofts, or is it simply to provide a similar type of amenity?
It's not specific about that.
Okay.
Whether it's a dog park or what type of facility or how it be relocated or replaced.
Is the proposed dog park that has been made part of this plan, is it intended to be a private dog park?
It could go either way, but the residents asked that it be, residents of Peachman Loan Lofts asked that it be made private to them, and it's been designed so that it could become private for their own use.
And this may be a question for John. Would it be in the best interest of the city for that to be privately owned for the sake of being able to mitigate the maintenance costs, or would it behoove us to have that be accessible to the public and take on the maintenance ourselves?
Well, I can say that we do have several people asking for dog parks in the city. However, the maintenance issue is a very good one. This being located close to their properties, we've been having the primary use of it based on that. Maintenance, of course, would be theirs as a private facility. So it's really, we have a need for it in the city. We haven't identified where that need is most prevalent.
And I'm going to stop here just real quick and add this. The nice thing with this is a conceptual, as the man said, a conceptual idea. And when you get down to implementing any part of it, it'll take on that life at that time. But it's a good question, a fair question, based on costs that you presented, thinking forward, what might be the best use of the city and/or grant dollars.
Just one last question. You have proposed sort of the concept of a 501c3. Would it be have you seen in other areas where that is, where the government is actually involved in that 501c3, or is the intention to hope that one is created, or is there a method for a public-private partnership that you know about? What are your thoughts on how that would be done?
Sure. So the 501c3 would not have government involvement, right? It would be separate. And other trails and our projects that we've worked on, it's neighborhood residents that have been very passionate about it have created the project, or the 501c3, and then work very closely with the city on the grant applications, on fundraising, on speaking to neighbors, on the strategy for the project.
So in those other areas, what you might suggest then is that the trail would be planned with a proposed site for an installation, where then the public would be encouraged to raise money for a piece of art to go there, and because it's on city property, the city would be able to approve the final installation.
I'm not following you. Can you restate that?
Well, I don't mean to belittle the point, I was just trying to create an example that we could all kind of get our heads around. And what you're suggesting is a way that we could utilize private dollars for the benefit of the public. And one proposed scenario could be where the city could define where it wanted installations of public art, and it could define certain elements of what the city wanted. The 501c3 or any other entity could pursue making an offer of an installation, and the city would be able to approve that installation.
Yes.
We have an example of that with Keep Chamblee Beautiful. They do the Legacy Bench program, which would be, I mean, if they wanted to do art, they could do that. It's very similar type program.
Right on, that's perfect.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just for the benefit of the folks in the audience that wasn't shown in this presentation, I understand that in the agenda packet, you've got kind of two separate proposals for this portion of the trail as it abuts Beach and Malone.
Yes, we did. We worked with Councilmember Mess on this, and I'd be happy to go through that if so desired.
I just more wanted to confirm that for the folks in the audience,
Yeah,
if they deem necessary.
Do you have that slide, Andy?
I do. It's actually in the packet.
Very good.
Thank you.
And again, this is conceptual.
Correct.
And everybody has, if the council adopts this, it'll be uploaded to the website, John?
Yes, this presentation will be uploaded to the website.
Okay.
The document itself is a fairly large document, and that will be uploaded.
Okay. Cool. I'll add one other thing just concerning funding, and maybe you're aware of this. I serve on the ARC board and also am a member of the TAQC, and they've come up with a regional trails task force. So you're familiar with that, what's going on? And
A little bit,
but it's great. I felt honored to be asked to serve on that task force, and they give you the what. So to introduction, they gave us the what, why, who, when, and the how. And I won't go through all. The what was the best regional trail system in the United States, and the ARC means that when they say it. And the when is the one that just really gets me, because if I've learned nothing else in public services, that things don't move as quickly as we would all like them to. But it said initial connected regional trail network open in 5 years, main trail system open in 10 years, entire system in 20 years. That to me is like rocket fast. The other thing too, we start talking about funding. One of the things I'd like for everybody to understand is that there are a lot more funds being made available for alternate modes of transportation, including trail systems. And one of the things that it just talks about, and some of the things from the first task force meeting we had, several of those opportunities to go after federal dollars, state dollars, finding other opportunities, as you mentioned with the 501c3. But then, we also just recently launched a 501c6 here with the Peachtree Gateway Partnership in our first project, which I think you've included in your study here, which is great. ARC produced for us the North DeKalb Trail Connectivity Study, which I can tell you in conversations I've had with folks, really puts this area out in front of a lot of others. Not discounting some of the great trails that are around, but talking about connecting those trails. I think we have like one of the first, if not the first, that identifies that interconnected trail system. To your point, adopting those plans, having them done, putting them out there, should put us towards the front of being able to get those funds. So when we look at large numbers, I get it. We paid $1 million for a piece of the rail trail that used to exist and that will exist again. But that was $1 million, and that was something the city just, we paid for out of city funds. There was no. Some of the land acquisition came from some green space funds, but for the most part, we pay for them. I think that there's lots of other alternatives as well, just want to point that out. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item, traffic calming program.
Thank you, Mayor. The traffic calming program that has been attached in the agenda packet is a fairly standard program that's based on a compilation of other communities as well as best practices. Essentially, the process would work as this. There would be an application through the residents that would trigger a request for a traffic calming in their community. The city staff would meet with the applicants to determine a study area, and that's essentially the impacted area of this traffic calming. The next step would be for applicants to gain signatures from 20% of households in the study area. And that's to ensure that there is some awareness of the program and what is being discussed in the process. Once that's received, the study would move forward. We would conduct a traffic design study. So we'd look at the traffic patterns as well as traffic incidents and provide some potential solutions for those. Once that study is complete and the traffic calming options have been identified, we move forward with the applicant gaining signatures of 75% of the households in the area to bring it to mayor and council for consideration.
Comments, questions?
It looks like you mentioned that between getting the 20% and the going to council with the getting the 75% signatures, there's some neighborhood meetings while discuss the plan. I guess it says with the applicant or neighborhood to discuss options. So that would be also a part of that. So there would be neighborhood input to the plan that comes to council, I guess.
That would be correct. The traffic study would have the neighborhood impact study, traffic operation study, and as well as input from the neighborhood.
75% seems a little bit high. Wanted to see if I had thoughts on potentially reducing that, given what we're talking about.
The county uses 60%, don't they?
I don't know.
Would anyone object to changing
I
that?
would others use.
I would probably raise the 20% up to start the study and then lower the final signature.
What do other jurisdictions do, John, related to what this one is proposed as?
In pulling this together, I've seen 65 and I've seen 75.
Do you know what DeKalb County does? Is it it's one or the other?
It's one or the other.
Right. Oh, good. That's safe. We're getting closer. We go 70, 65, 75.
Are these, is this the implementation of the traffic calming measures? Are those things that would have a cost that would be compelled upon the neighboring property owners?
That is correct.
I'm okay with the 75%, but I do think that the 20% I think is too low. I think that if the traffic study and all of the resources that are necessary in order to be able to do something is only activated by 3 people, I think that potentially puts us in a place where we could be doing an awful lot of this, and it can, I think that there needs to be a demonstration of a little bit more community buy-in by way of getting initial signatures up front by people to get things started. So I would recommend to council that be either 40, maybe 40% to get the process started. And I'm not sure that I would think we would have to think of a better way other than to characterize it as just 3 people. Maybe 3 people and a council person or something.
It seems like there's a distinction there, though. 3 people is just required to get staff to meet with them to determine what area we're talking about. It's not to do any sort of study or anything like that. 3 people just for staff to draw the map.
Oh, I got you, okay.
So the 20% is where you get to a study.
So the 3 people could activate it, but actually create the study, we could have that be a percentage of the defined area that staff and the people come up with.
Correct. Correct. And at this point, that's 20% to activate, to actually move forward with funding a traffic design study.
And do those 3 residents have to be in different households?
I do not think that is laid out.
That's a good point.
Perhaps that's something we could adjust.
But the signatures do.
I would suggest that we come up to like 40% to actually activate the city spending money to create plans.
Right.
I think it should be unique households too, but
20%
I got no problem with the 40%.
And I think that you're right. I think 20% of household, or 40% households are probably better than 40% of the actual citizens.
Right. So you have some houses could have 3 people.
Yep.
It is written, at this point, it is 3 property owners.
Yeah, it needs to be the property owner, because they're the ones that have to pay the assessment.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you're asking a renter a piece of property, they may go, yeah, that's great, and 6 months they're out of there, the property owner's then got an assessment of the property. I think you have to be the property owner.
Great idea.
So how would these changes be implemented? Would this be something we would do in our motion on Tuesday, or is this something we could do now? How would you?
If you tell me the change now, I will make it.
Well, and then say if we've got consensus and there's no real disagreement, then we can move it forward. Otherwise, it's better to discuss it
So,
before you vote on it.
so looking for agreement, 3 distinct property owners for the application. Is there any discussion, or anyone not okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay, 40% on the households for the study area.
No problem.
Okay, and 75%, do we want to reduce that or keep it?
Reduce it.
Reduce it.
65%?
65.
Yes.
City manager said you see 65 and 75.
Okay, explain to me, tell me again, the property owners will be assessed the whole installation cost?
The way that it is currently presented, any traffic calming that comes from the traffic study that is implemented, the cost would be, for maintenance going forward, would be assessed in a special district.
For maintenance, but not installation?
That's the way it is currently.
Okay.
Okay, but it's my understanding that other jurisdictions, it's typically the installation of the traffic calming is assessed to the property owners.
There are some that have done that, yes.
That's what I would be in favor of.
Okay.
And would that leave us the opportunity to waive it if we deem necessary?
I think you'd be finding yourself in a slippery slope. You waive it for one neighborhood and then don't waive it for the next. You can waive it for my neighborhood, right? But not somebody else's. I mean,
I understand the implications of that, but if we have one that we deem is really necessary based on the traffic study and there's nothing
I
after
guess you have the authority to do whatever you want. It's legal.
I would venture to say that if something is of city importance, that it would probably be brought to council by a council member before citizens.
I mean, we put speed tables through Keswick Park. Nobody came and asked for speed tables in Keswick Park. The city put them there.
No, that's fine, so it's a separate process.
Well, what kind of costs are we talking about? Can you give a ballpark figure for, I don't know, per size?
It depends on what you're doing.
Well, I know, it does depend on what you're doing. So can you give a high and low range per, like, speed table as opposed to four-way intersection table?
15 to 25,000 per speed table for actual installation.
Roundabout, I imagine, could be much more.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And so are you okay with assessing property owners for the total cost of installation of
Well, it would be done over time. It wouldn't be like next
Not one
year.
lump
It
sum.
wouldn't be a one lump sum deal. It's not the way it's spread out over at least 10 years, I believe. But I'm more in favor of the ongoing maintenance, because 25 years from now, the people they still need ongoing maintenance. So I think you kind of.
The way I understand it from other jurisdictions is both. That there's an assessment for the initial installation, and then there's some type of a table that's figured out for ongoing maintenance. You know, I mean, that's what's typically done elsewhere. I don't, you know, we talk about this all the time. Why do we?
65% of homeowners, and they pay for the installation, and then $25 a year.
The cap is broke.
And the cap is broke, I understand.
Well, we could do 50% assessed and 50% paid as well. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that. Aside from administration and creating a headache for our.
I would recommend that council consider that if a group of citizens come together and they want to do a traffic calming measure, I think that would be different than a council person coming to council with something in the interest of the entire city.
Of course.
Sounds like we need to work on this longer.
But
Also
also,
consensus.
couldn't the neighborhood kind of decide how that was, like, the financing worked on that? I mean, we can give you one, you know?
I don't think you can do
I
that.
mean, they would have input in the process. I mean, if one traffic calming measure is going to cost them $30 a year, and another one's going to cost them 10, they may elect to go for the $10 a year option. I'm just saying. No? Not a good idea? Okay.
I can bring some options forward for.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all are ready to move on this on Tuesday night, then, that's your prerogative. It sounds to me like there's still some work that needs to be done and some research and questions that need to be asked. But again, it's up to y'all to decide what you want to do with it. But we'll move on. I'll turn the page. Nope, sorry, we got, what? Yes. Yeah, we'll stay on the agenda. Let's up to the council to decide what they want to do with it. What's that?
I can decide that.
Okay, so unless the council is in agreement that it needs to be taken off the agenda and the staff will bring it back.
I'd rather see it taken off the agenda and brought back.
Me too.
Okay, very good. I'm seeing consensus on that. So thank you, Yemi, for asking. Way to be assertive, Mr. Mock. I will never confuse you with Mr. John. All right, very good. I kept trying to turn the page. Teresa, hey, so you're going to talk to us about financial policy. And it's not even F for finance. It's like 3.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet, you will find the proposed financial policies for the City of Chamblee. In early June, the City Administrator requested a comprehensive review of the city's fiscal procedures and practices for the purpose of comparing them to the City Code and industry best practices. Upon review, we found the need to adopt a written financial policy to standardize the practices across departments and provide written guidance for the areas such as capital budgeting, disposal of assets, and purchasing. The purchasing section specifically would now provide a department director with thresholds for purchasing. The new policy states, when a purchase for a single good is expected to exceed $25,000, competition is required to the extent that it exists. Each department director shall document the competitive process with records of the vendor and quotes received. When a purchase for a single good is expected to exceed $100,000, a formal bid process is required. It also sets director's purchasing authority at $5,000. The city manager shall have the authority to purchase individual goods costing more than $5,000 each, as long as the cost remains within the approved budget or as directed by council. Prior to writing the policy, I read through the sections of the city code related to finance, looked at our current practices, and reviewed the fiscal policies of other cities such as Decatur, Roswell, and Smyrna. The finance director and the city administrator both were heavily involved in the drafting process. The policy has been reviewed by all the department directors and the city attorney. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you, Teresa. Questions, Darren?
Yeah, I got one, and I may have just read it wrong after listening to your presentation, but I thought I had read that the disposal for the city manager was $5,000 original purchase price, not department level. Did I read that incorrectly?
The disposal or the purchasing authority?
Both really, but disposal was the one I was looking at first.
Okay. Purchasing authorities above $5,000. Let me check. Disposal is related to capital assets. And capital assets are set at the original, with an original value of over $5,000.
So I would like.
So the city council will approve or disapprove the request of disposal of capital assets.
Over 5,000, so I'd like to raise that to 25,000, being its original purchase price is depreciated assets. If you buy something for $5,000, you go to sell it 5 years from now, you're really not talking a huge impact, and I would like to see that one raised. I'd throw out 25,000 for discussion, and we could add that the finance director and the city manager have made folks more comfortable. But I just think we're going to get a lot of things brought to us that they're more than capable of deciding.
Well, I would say either, with, I mean, you said finance director, I said, with city manager approval.
Either the city manager or the two together.
Okay.
Just depending what folks are comfortable with.
I hear you. Okay. I misunderstood. Yeah, I got it. Mitch?
John, are you comfortable with that, John?
I'm comfortable with that, yes.
Okay. And it looked like our finance director was looking to speak. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I was just saying, we're just really trying to be able, because in the past, we haven't really gotten rid of anything, no matter what it costs. So we're just trying to be able to get rid of the junk.
And on the jump, man, I like that. That's the quote of the night.
25,000 people love most cars. I imagine we could have some that were below that. Very few, because it's original purchase price, not social price. And then on purchasing, what was the limit for the city manager was, so department head was 5,000 and city manager was how much? I'm sorry.
Basically, the city manager would have the authority of over 5,000, as long as it remained within the approved budget.
Okay.
So there's no cap. So it's within the approved budget or as directed by
Or as
the council.
directed. Okay. And this is probably more of a question for the city manager, but outsourced department heads, would they maintain that approval authority, or would it have to go through someone else?
The purchase of goods through the contract would be part of the contract, but any goods that would be purchased for the city ownership or for city use that would come through the city manager.
Okay. Perfect.
Why are we using the purchase price to determine the value of the disposal of a product? Of an item?
The purchase price is a set point that you can pull, whereas the value is something that you would have to calculate, and it would be calculated differently based on the asset.
Gotcha. I would just add that that's probably a fair representation of the replacement cost.
Anything else? Okay, moving right along. Thank you, Teresa. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Still under city manager, we have Keswick Park Fill and Grading Project.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The city has received a donation, essentially, of labor and materials for the filling of an area at Keswick Park. It's hard to see on this map, but it is where next to the softball field, essentially where the current bridge for the rail trail is. You can see in this area the vehicular bridge for the Parkside development, and this gives you a little bearing on where the fill would be. So this would be on city property. It would be a city project. So looking for essentially approval. This is something the council would like to move forward with. We can begin with the fill of that area and the grading of that area. I will say, if you do act tonight, we can begin immediately.
All right.
So I'll just say that this is the area directly behind home plate. A lot of it's behind the third base foul line, if you will, between the planned project and in addition to that bridge. And I will say I'm all for it.
Very good. So it sounds like it gets started. If there are no other questions, or if somebody would like to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Keswick Park Fill and Grading Project as submitted by staff.
Second.
Any other discussion? Very good. We have a motion and a second then to approve the Keswick Park Fill and Grading Project as submitted by staff. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. John, thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you.
Both John.
Well, both Johns. Yeah, sorry. John, J.W. I'm going to just call you J.W. How's that? Deputy. Mary Ann?
I've been called worse.
I've been called worse. Yeah, haven't we all? Stop reading the internet, John. All right, we're on the development department. We had an item that was a public hearing item that will move to the, I guess, that one, keep me straight here. That one would move to Tuesday evening, right? That one?
Correct. No action tonight.
Then the next item is the Chamblee Road Holiday Inn Campbellwood Suite Hotel. We had a request to allow the applicant to withdraw that variance application. Correct.
Motion to withdraw the applicant's application for variance.
Is there a second?
Sorry, I butchered.
Second.
So basically what you're saying, John, is it's to accept the applicant's request to withdraw.
Would you like to add without prejudice to that?
Without prejudice.
Sure, I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Really, just such a
I'll second that.
All right, any other discussion? We have a motion and second then to allow the applicant to withdraw the variance request without prejudice. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. All right, the next item was requested to be deferred and has already been voted on to be deferred, correct? Yes. All right. Police Department, we have budget amendment for state confiscated asset funds, and I don't know why this is in all caps, but it must be important. It is. I mean, it's like it's yelling at me. It's a budget amendment for state confiscated assets.
He asked multiple times, but I'd already posted the agenda, so I will take care of it for 2.
No, that's cool. I like it, man. Confiscated assets. Let's hear about it. This is very authoritative.
We have a 1993 Ford van that was a hand-me-down from the Parks Department that we converted into a police transport van. And it's made its last trip to the county jail. It needs a new motor. We've got rust in the gas tank. We have money in our state confiscated account that I'd like to spend to purchase a new vehicle. The dilemma is we didn't budget, anticipate this. Spend that money in that account, so we need to appropriate the additional $50,000 to our state confiscated account.
Okay. Any questions? A little anticlimactic, I gotta say.
Did you leave the van at the jail?
No, we had to bring it back and take our stuff out.
Give it to DeKalb County. Maybe they could use it. All right. Next item, still under you, Chief, is proposed ordinance for designation of drug-free zones.
Yes, this is something I was working on when Mark turned over to Chamblee, and I was researching it then, and then when I began helping Jody with her addition to the Parks ordinance, I wanted to move it forward kind of together. And basically, there's a Georgia ordinance 161332 allows us to designate within 1,000 feet of a park or recreation center as a drug-free recreation zone, similar to like schools, very similar to that. And what it calls for is that it's really after, to go ahead and enhance penalties for the real serious charge of the intent to distribute trafficking type cases. So we did a little research, and since we've taken over the park, we've had at least 6 arrests that I can track there for drugs. One of them was an intent to distribute type of case. So I want to try to use any means we have necessary to try to combat that and make it park a safe area. So we designate it that way. We adopt the map, official map, and we can kind of put signage up and coordinate with Jody on that and work to get the park improved, make it a safer environment. We'll need you to request us to move it to first read for Tuesday night, and then with adoption in September, and also adopt the map, official map of the park. Cool.
Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, is that for both public and private property within 1,000 feet of the park? Or is it anywhere if you're...
It draws the 1,000 feet obviously extends away from the park and everything, but it doesn't have to do with inside somebody's perfect residence. It specifically talks that that penalty is not in place for that. It can be on the streets, out on the public right away.
Very cool. Other questions? All right. So any objection to moving this to first read?
No objection.
All right. So if you will, let me please move this to first read. Here we go, F for finance. I knew it would be on there somewhere, right? It's on there every month. But F for finance. Oh, but it's get me. God, I just got so excited. Guys, I got a flight tonight, I can only stay here so long. I'm trying to move forward. No, my flight has not been canceled. How about that, It's on Delta, too. All right. So we are on Parks and Recreation. I'm sorry. And there you are. I know. Well, New kid on the block, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to talk to us about a Dresden Park entrance sign.
Correct. As you're all aware, we need a new entrance sign at Dresden Park, so folks know that it belongs to Chamblee. And staff feels that the chosen sign will be the most impactful. The sign will make use of the existing stone wall as the base, which will save us some money. The sign will incorporate the same rail trellis that is found on all the other city signs, which will tie in the same look to it. The sign will be more visible than our existing signs because it's a much larger scale. It's made completely of aluminum, and the company is telling us it would take 6 to 8 weeks to complete the order once it's placed, or to complete it once it's placed. And the current vendor is, I don't know if anybody has been by there lately, but there are some stones that have, I don't know if they fell off or somebody broke them off, but the current vendor is aware that they're off and has stated that they can do the mason work to fix that prior to installing the sign on this base.
Questions?
Any lighting? Is it ground lit or backlit or anything like that?
There is no lighting on that. The picture makes it look like there may be some lighting, but there is no lighting.
I was just looking at ground light, but I don't think there's electric yet or something like that.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you very much. Oh, you're still up there, right? Okay, no smoking code for city buildings and parks.
So while working with Donnie on the drug-free zones, I was looking at creating some park rule signs for all of our parks, and it was determined that we currently do not have a section on tobacco use under Parks and Recreation. And so staff reviewed other city ordinances and found that several cities around us, including Dunwoody, Brookhaven, City of Atlanta, all have ordinances in place currently. We feel that there are 3 major things that will be eliminated by adopting a tobacco use ordinance. One of those things would be it will assist with secondhand smoke exposure. It will reduce the amount of trash that is created by cigarette butts that are tossed on the ground, and it will help keep the risk of fire danger at bay. Additionally, we feel that by adopting this ordinance, we would be doing our part in encouraging the people to live a healthy lifestyle.
Right, so I have a question for you. We're talking about, so you mentioned parks.
Yes, sir.
We're also talking about city buildings.
Yes, so in order, if we adopt the parks ordinance, we would also have to just reword the ordinance that's under the city.
Do you have to reword it? Or can you just do exclusive for the parks?
I'm going to leave that to Donnie to answer. I'm not sure.
As I recall, the ordinance that we had on the books, it was not the recreation zone, but the other about smoking, it talked about the buildings and city property, so they conflict with each other, parks or city property, so we just made some adjustments to the city building ordinance regarding smoking.
Reginald, have you talked to your staff about that? Not to pick on you specifically, but I think you have a large staff, and maybe the other departments do, and I'm not aware of it, but there's staff that smoke there. And is there any conversations?
No, I haven't.
It's just a big change, I think, for some folks in their work environment.
There's your smoking cessation plan.
Yeah.
Well, would it include the area around buildings, like say the public works facility, or is it just exclusive to inside the buildings or small city land?
It basically states, the city ordinance states, it's talking about smoking inside buildings. I don't believe in parking lots or anything like that would be an issue based on
So
what
we're talking about, okay, well, so we're talking about parks, right? So parks and the parking lots and anything that is identified as a park.
Correct.
And then because you're doing that, you also have to do, or you would like to do, and I just don't understand that, the city buildings as well. And
The wording on the city buildings, I believe, is we were adding e-cigarettes, the vaporized cigarettes, we were adding that to the wording of the
so
parks.
does the city already have an ordinance against smoking in buildings? Oh, okay.
Yes,
sorry,
it was just rewording it to clarify e-cigarettes, basically.
Sorry. Never mind then.
And the city's ordinance with regard to buildings also has a provision for within a certain number of feet from the front door, from the entrances, right? I think that's one of the things that has been kind of the second generation of a lot of those rules, is not just push it outside, but also away from the doors so folks don't have to walk through a cloud of smoke to get into a building.
Actually, after looking at this, I do not see a section where it discusses distance or anything like
If you
that.
can get consensus from council and if it's okay with staff, that's something that I would be interested in adding.
From the front of the building or from the front door or all the way around the building?
It's from an entrance.
Any entrance.
There's a certain number of feet that creates a sort of a zone, and I think that it's fairly standard in a lot of other places, so maybe we can just see what other folks do.
Okay.
Moving right along, thank you very much. Travis, what's up?
Mayor Clark, will that item be moving to a first read, or will it stay on the agenda?
It seems to me like it moved first read.
Just checking.
That's right, your microphone doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
All right, I already went through that for finance. We're getting tired of that. I got to come up with something else. G for public works. H doesn't work. H for economic, we can work. Okay, anyway. All right, economic development strategic plan update, target industry analysis. Who are you going to introduce?
I will introduce somebody. Thank you. This is a brief update and introduction to target industry analysis from our consultant, Al Talente, with RKG Associates. I will turn it over to him and he'll briefly go through and take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Adam.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I want to briefly update you on where we are in the plan. The positive news is that we are rounding the corner and heading for home. You'll be excited to know the next time we talk, we're going to actually have some concrete recommendations for you to mull over in a draft framework for implementation. But tonight is the wrap-up of the analysis component. As you're seeing on the screen, the analyses that we've done, that we've talked about, tonight is the target industry and cluster. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit from large scale and then bring you back down to the city of Chamblee. Hopefully it'll make sense to you. In this analysis, there's a couple key findings that we felt important to update you on. The first one is that Georgia Metro Atlanta region are highly desirable locations for businesses to locate. The state and the county are very aggressive with their incentive packages to bring businesses into the area, and also it's a very highly desirable from a standpoint of quality of life, cost of living, cost of employment. However, your economic development recruitment strategies is going to be as much a regional one as a local one, and the reason why that is that we are going to have to focus on scale. A lot of the incentives and the aggressiveness that the state and the county does is towards larger projects. And the fact of the matter remains is that within the city of Chamblee, you don't have a lot of product that can meet a lot of those thresholds. And so a lot of the interest, as you heard tonight from the proposal to convert the garage into an office space, is going to be relatively smaller scale stuff. And we think that's important. Number one, from the standpoint is there is a market for it, but number two is the city is probably going to have to take a more proactive role in trying to attract those and differentiate itself from other communities in the Metro Atlanta area. We do have a lot of wonderful assets here in the community that we identified in the analysis. However, certainly many other inside the perimeter, not downtown Atlanta as well. And so how are we going to differentiate ourselves from that? One of the top things I think we have to sell here is the fact that we kind of bridge the urban-suburban market here very, very well. I don't think a lot of folks outside the city of Chamblee understand this, which is the point I'm trying to bring up here is, you know, we have a lot of those urban amenities, access, transportation, MARTA, which is a very key asset here. But when you look at a lot of the quality of life issues, we reflect a lot more of a suburban community. And I think that most people don't really appreciate or understand how much of that suburban cool factor, that differentiation of life that you get here. And a lot of folks look at it as that industrial heritage that the city has had. And unfortunately, from our standpoint, is that hinders your economic development from some perspective, because it turns people off to what really is here in the community. And so one of the things that comes out of this for us is the marketing, outreach, and information component of economic development is going to need to be a lot more robust and a lot more proactive to try and change those perspectives we have that people from outside the community have. Another key asset that we found is residential development is critical to your economic development. And one of the interesting things, if you look through the larger PowerPoint that we sent last week, is your development mix is still heavily weighted towards owner occupancy. And you would think that from that perspective was something that you wouldn't expect from an inside the perimeter MARTA access community.
Will you say that again?
The majority of your housing here in the city of Chamblee is owner-occupied housing.
Where did you get that?
That is from, I'll have to look at the source, but I believe we pulled that right out of Census American Community Survey.
Okay, well, then we're wrong, because I've been told in every study we've had before now says 65% of our residents live in some form of rental housing, whether that be multifamily or single-family detached.
Well, I'll confirm that with you, but the information that we found shows that
Look at it again.
I will. It shows that Chamblee has a predominance of ownership. Now, remember, if you remember from earlier conversations, this is not the city of Chamblee proper boundary because the data doesn't exist for your existing city. So we had to pull.
Okay, but here's the problem with that.
Yes.
Premise. Okay.
Okay.
We're talking about the city of Chamblee.
Yes.
We're talking about city of Chamblee taxpayers paying for this study that we're doing.
Absolutely.
When you put a number out there like that, and we talk about the number of rental units that are being developed or are currently in the city, and then somebody else hears, oh no, well you've got all these, owner-occupied, when there's not. We're somewhere in the neighborhood, and I'll go out there and say it. There's somewhere in the neighborhood, 65% of our residents live in some form of rental housing, and I think the study should probably reflect that.
Okay. Well, like you said, and like I agreed to, I'll take a look at that again, and I'll make sure that those facts are accurate. But if they're not, then I'll probably sit down with Adam and go through it to make sure that we have the information that you're citing. Because if that is the accurate number, I want to make sure I get that number from. So
Well, it may not be the accurate number if you're looking at a 135 mile radius or whatever your target is. Then yeah, you're going to capture areas that are outside of the city limits of Chamblee.
Okay.
And I know that the portion of your study needs to do that and looking at the boundaries, but for the purpose of keeping folks with the proper information about what's in the city limits of Chamblee, I would just ask you to be cautious about what you put out there in that.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'll be happy to go back and double check that and make sure that the numbers are correct if they're not correct.
With all due respect, he did present the map in the last presentation.
Okay.
And where the boundaries were lying, and it was a pretty close fit. So
okay, well,
I'm not disagreeing with what the number is, but I'd still be curious to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, well, I said
I'll shut him up. I mean, I want to hear what he has to say too. Just point that out.
No, I understand.
That's it. You're done. Go away.
Sorry, you got that wrong. Clarification. Are you talking about the jurisdiction specific or the area that we consider to be the business,
I'm talking about the census tracts that we identified that make up as close of approximation of the city as we could get.
So your study is not about the jurisdiction specific?
The study is about the jurisdiction specific, but the data sources aren't available for certain components of it to just look at the boundaries of the city. And so we had to approximate and get as close as we possibly could.
Somehow others have come up with the actual residential and owner-occupied rate within the city boundaries.
Okay, well, like I said,
I don't know how they come up with it. It's not what I do.
I'll work with Adam to find out what those are, and we'll compare and make sure we have the right one in the document.
Thank you.
However, one of the things that we learned about is the diversity in supply. When we looked at your sales data for existing housing, which is stuff that was built prior to 2000, and the stuff that has been built since, it's a very different look. And I'm quoting numbers off the top of my head, but your older housing supply, ownership piece, sells on average about $300,000 a unit, whereas stuff built since then, particularly the most recent construction, is 700,000+ units. So what you're seeing come into the community is a very different, very specific market type. And when a lot of the economic development that you've had benefited from recently, a lot of larger scale regional retail centers that have been built and put into the community, they rely on that more modest cost housing for their workers. And so it's just one of the things we consider as we move forward from economic development is the inclusion, making sure that we have units that are affordable to folks that are going to be taking and are working in some of those jobs that we have.
And so why do you suppose that those houses, the newer houses, are being built at the higher price point?
Supply and demand. It's the fact that
there are really not any executive, what I refer to in the real estate development world as executive move-up housing. They did not exist in Chamblee.
Sure.
And so yeah, it's supply and demand. So when you want to talk about housing choice, there was no executive move-up type housing choice in the city of Chamblee as much as just not that many years ago.
I'm not sure I'm decrying the fact that it's happening. I'm just saying we need to recognize that, and with all the development that has been gone on, has been focused on one specific market, is just to be aware of that as additional development goes, and particularly redevelopment, which is going to be a large part of your economic development strategy, is be cognizant of the fact that there is an existing economic demand for that housing, and that just eliminating it altogether, allowing it to go because of market forces, could be long-term detrimental to the community. That's the only point that I'm trying to make here. I'm not saying that the higher-end housing is a bad thing. I'm just saying as you continue to develop, this is a strategic point to keep in mind.
Do you have metrics, data that states what that percentage is at this point, and at what percentage we should really be concerned about it?
I don't have anything off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Well, you sounded pretty concerned or pretty sure about it, so I want to point that out.
Okay. And like I mentioned earlier, that the state and county incentives have a gap for small businesses, and this is one of the things that we also wanted you to point out through the study is your niche is really going to be in the small to mid-sized business just because of the competitive nature of when you start getting into those bigger companies that have bigger needs, you're then start butting up against Buckhead and Perimeter and Midtown and Downtown, and so your scale is going to be a little bit smaller, which kind of falls outside of that, a lot of the state and county economic incentives. And so the only point I'm making here is that as you move forward as a community to try and differentiate yourself, as I mentioned, is how do we identify ways to provide incentives or to put policies in place that can make us look more attractive in other communities, and that's one of the things that we're going to be addressing in the next discussion.
So I'll ask you there, how do you figure Century Center into that? Because I suppose the people at Highwoods would have a different opinion about the folks they're trying to attract into their properties.
Well, once again, I would define Century Center as your value alternative. Your existing current pricing, the lack of some of the amenities that those larger office tenants are looking for is impacting their ability to find those larger tenants to move in. And so while it does provide that value incentive, some of those larger users aren't looking for that kind of space in that kind of location. Once again, it's not that no one would take it. It's the fact that when you're starting to get into that size and they can start demanding specific amenities and have specific requirements about what that space is, you're now competing against other markets that provide those better than you do.
So I'll take you there, then seeing as that's a city document, what can the city do then in that particular market, that area, to help or incentivize or work with the folks that are in that market?
Absolutely. Well, if you remember from the opportunities analysis, we identify certain areas of Century Center in using that example for higher intensity redevelopment, which you could encourage through either some sort of zoning or some sort of financial inducement to have them provide some of those amenities in those new building developments that can then augment and assist all the rest of that area. And so there are recommendations, and I know we had to kind of fly through that opportunities analysis, but there are those discussions about each of the different opportunity areas within the city.
Okay, thank you.
Factors considered in the cluster analysis when we start looking at the types of target industries we think the city would be good for. The 5 real main points that we look at is there a strong local regional presence? Do these industries have growth potential within Chamblee and within the region? Is it identified as a target industry by DeKalb County and by Georgia? And in that case, it's because when you go after something that they're interested in too, they're willing to put their resources behind it, and you can start leveraging some of the dollars that you have. Industries that capitalize on your strengths, like we already talked about some of the numbers of assets that you have here. And then finally, and this is a little bit more of a feel our way, which is a good local fit. And I can't give you an example right off the top of my head, but I could say in other communities we've worked in, there have been types of business that might have been good for that area, but the community would have never supported. And so we tried to be as cognizant as we could through all the interviews that we had, including with each of the individual council members, in terms of, even though it may look good on paper, we have to make sure that it's something that's in the best interest of the community, and so we look at that as well. So looking here is looking at industry strength for what we call in the Chamblee Super District, which is that area around those census tracts that make up pretty much the proximate of the city. Really what I want to point out to you here is you have a fairly well balanced, and the size of the bubble is determine the number of jobs. You have a fairly well balanced market here. We also looked at it from, there we go. We also looked at it from the DeKalb County perspective, and you see there's a lot more specialization and growth strategy. And I bring up these graphics only to show you, number one is that, we're not just looking at opportunities within Chamblee based on what you have, but how can we play into the local and regional market. And so we took both of these pieces of information as part of how we then drove some of the target industries that we identified. So within that, I think we identified 5 total target industries, and they're not really presented in any particular order, just in the way that we laid the slides down as we created the PowerPoint. The first one is technical research, consulting, and corporate operations. And this includes everything from professional services, information services, the management of companies, there we go, and then the support industries that provide services to those businesses. And once again, the takeaway here I want to give you is, not only are we trying to identify ways to capitalize on that knowledge-based industries that we have here regionally, that our location being really so close to Midtown, downtown, through MARTA access, and then Buckhead and perimeters, how do we grab access to some of those opportunities and bring them here? It's about the scale. Once again, I'm not saying that you can't have a 200 or 500 or 1,000 person firm, but you're probably going to see a lot more return on your investment, if you will, focusing on those small to mid-sized companies that may not want to pay those prices or may not need to be in those downtown locations, but want to be close enough where they have access to the workforce and access to the amenities, particularly the cool factor stuff we're talking about with your downtown, that they can get. Did I go too fast, too far? Yeah. Next is local regional distribution, and this is one we talked about a little bit last time when we looked at the opportunity sites. The Metro Atlanta region is, as a whole, is starved for opportunities to do distribution and small-scale production-based activity. A lot of those uses have been zoned out as or just highest and best use redeveloped to something that makes more money. There is an opportunity there, and you can see here a number of the different things that we can do. If you remember from the opportunities site assessment, we identified some areas within the city that we think were strong redevelopment potential for some of these uses. But this goes back to the point that I made last time, which is, where is the vision of the city is understanding that this isn't exactly the sexiest of economic development opportunities. However, there is potential, and you do still have some supply within the city that could be marketed and should still be marketed towards keeping those spaces full and those opportunities exist. The next one is tied closely to that, which is production-based, but we were very selective in what we recommended here. The specialty trade contractors, the vision there is that 10 to 40,000 square foot flex warehouse facility that has that office or storefront, the first front 15 or 20%, and then they have their supply in the back. Specifically targeting something that is consistent with the character of a lot of your existing industrial areas, but also something that can help make sure your spaces that you have now stay full, and if you choose to move in the direction of adding supply, to fill it here in the community. The second one down there is manufacturing, and that is tied into the fact that there is a strong regional growth in the aerospace consulting and aerospace production industry. And as Adam mentioned to me after we had already put this in the presentation, there is interest from that regionally, particularly, and also looking here in the city of Chamblee. So that just kind of justified in our mind that this is an opportunity out there. Maybe not necessarily one you pursue aggressively compared to some of the other ones we think are lower hanging fruit, but one that we felt important to mention only because we believe there are opportunities that will come to the community. Next is healthcare, nonprofit, institutional. I'll deal with the healthcare one first, even though it's not listed first. The reality is you have 5 hospitals within 10 miles of the city of Chamblee, including Northside, which is up in perimeter. We're not talking about recruiting a hospital here, but we are talking about that there is a potential, given your central location, for the docs that support and work in those hospitals to have an office and can benefit from being in a community that doesn't have a primary healthcare facility like that. And so there's a lot of opportunities there that you can see here. The other one that is more regional opportunity, but is really an opportunity everywhere, is support service care facility. As our baby boomers continue to age and will eventually fall into the category of needing additional services to either age in place or facilities for them to go to, that will continue to be an option for you. The other components, the educational services, and this is one where we see the potential of everything from helping ICT to continue to thrive and expand, to trying bringing in other higher institutions of learning to partner with a workforce development and training program. And we didn't talk a lot about that in this presentation, but we do in the report is, you have a population of folks that if you want everybody in the city to be able to participate in some of these economic development strategies, there's going to be a requirement to help them get prepared from a workforce perspective in participating in that. And so part of our vision is how do we get some of those other providers to come, because there isn't really a training facility really close by the community, particularly accessible by non-automotive means. How do we get them to come and be part of our community, but then also help us meet some of our workforce needs? And then finally, is the service organizations. The Metro Atlanta area has a strong, robust nonprofit world, and here I just want to bring out, I don't know why it's doing this to me. Oh, you're moving it? Okay. So they're going, I'm not pressing the buttons. But the service organizations, it's not necessarily, like, for example, for religions, it's not bringing in churches, but it's bringing in organizations that provide services within Metro Atlanta region or Metro Atlanta area or the region, and are looking for office headquarters sites. And these are some of the folks, Mr. Mayor, that I think would be interested in something like Century Center, where these entities tend to look for those value opportunities for office space. Finally is the entertainment and recreation, and this is frankly tied a lot around the downtown plan that has been discussed and I think is upcoming, is the fact that how do we define the vision for what we want for our downtown, and then identify those types of industries that economic development can go out and help bring to your community. And so as you get into that process and you start drill down more into specifically what you envision this area to look like and have, this is where economic development would kick in and help participate by trying to bring those users in and sell them on the vision. The final piece that I have to talk about is entrepreneurs, and this is one that I think is an interesting viewpoint, but maybe not necessarily one you provide a lot of effort on in the initial stages. I mean, there's notable growth in DeKalb County in sole proprietors and small business owners. As your community continues to age and you have those move-up executive housing, as Mr. Mayor pointed out, you know, those folks, as they get closer towards retirement, or they decide, you know what, I don't feel like working for my company anymore, I want to branch out and become my own consultant or start my own firm, there's opportunities within the city, and as you continue to see that executive level housing grow, particularly as those millennials and those new families come and move in your community and become Chamblee residents, to say, okay, midterm, long-term, how do we then help them start their own business or grow the business that they've created? So that is the presentation around the target industry component. I want to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our next time when we can talk about...
Mr. Oden's grabbing his mic. Hang on a second. He probably has a question.
I got a couple of questions. I just, first of all, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much. You spoke fast, which means I wrote my questions fast, which means I hope that I can read what I wrote. You know, when you let off in the beginning, you were talking about there being an indication that the state and the county are heavily investing in economic development. Did you give any indication whatsoever that any of that investment is taking place in the city of Chamblee?
No. I don't have any information that shows that they've been making direct investments here.
Because the federal government has invested substantially in the CDC facility.
Yes.
PDK is a county-owned airport. We've seen very little, I guess, expansion other than being able to put more airplanes out there. I'm wondering, is the actual development in terms of like the physical space and or other resources on the airport part of your study, or because it's actually a county-owned facility, was that sort of excluded?
No, we've been working at length with the folks at PDK. The inside, what we call inside the fence, there's inside the fence, outside the fence.
Yeah. They
have a master plan that's in place of how they're going to use their facility, which makes a lot of sense. But it is focused around expanding the usage of the airport. We identified ways to try and use that asset to look at areas around the airport for economic development, particularly, for example, between Claremont Road and the airport boundaries, both up near Chamblee Tucker Road and then down closer to the southern end of the airport, is how do we find ways to create economic development opportunities from a real estate, from a land use perspective, to attract businesses that are more tied in with PDK that either can't or aren't allowed to be inside the fence, if you will. And so there are recommendations around that.
Will the recommendations for all of that come with the final plan? Is this a sneak peek at what you're going to allude to in the future? Because you had made mention of financial incentives as part of a potential solution for economic development. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that we have the capacity to be able to offer financial assistance to anyone other than maybe a store that might like to relocate here from another part of the metropolitan area or something like that. Most of what we have as incentives is our ability to serve their needs better, or the land use planning that goes into setting the stage for them to be successful in going through like a permitting process.
Well, I think that to respond to your initial question is, I think that there are some opportunities out there that we're going to detail of how to use some of the resources that either you have or that are potentially upcoming towards economic development.
That's what you're going to do with your recommendations in the future? Sorry to interrupt you.
That's going to be coming next.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do want to address the fact that I think the land use real estate side of things and how you create efficiencies and the ability for them to develop the type of properties that will meet the needs of these types of businesses that we identified is a tremendous incentive to put out there to catalyze investment.
Okay. I think that a lot of folks in the room would agree with you that the focus of our competitive advantage might be that we are a great place for a small or mid-sized business to locate. Is your recommendation going to focus more on what it is that we might do to attract larger companies, or is your focus going to be on what we can do to shore up our core competitive advantage, if in fact that is our competitive advantage?
Well, it's going to be both. I think we're going to provide you with the menu of options that you have out there based on the various economic development opportunities that you have. The ones that we indeed believe you're not going to be able to see as much return on your investment, and I use that term a lot because you have a limited amount of resources to spend on economic development, we're trying to provide you with a plan to put you in the best position for success. And so, to that point, the initial priority recommendations probably will focus around how do we make us more competitive for those small to mid-sized companies, because I think that's where you're going to have your greatest success. With the longer term strategies that may not be as defined in detail, but will be identified within the study to say, here are the things you need to work on if your vision is to move to this next level, or you want to go after this particular business.
Okay. There's also a bit of a conflict that is created with the idea of distribution businesses, because I think if you built out Chamblee with wholesale office space, I think it would all lease up tomorrow. The truth be known, though, I think highest and best use has pressure against being able to deliver that, and because of the lifestyle and needs and the amenity as it relates to what people live around, I think the distribution is hard to zone for. Will your plan give us some indication as to how it is that we might find ways to create a distribution function that might work within our zoning? Do you drill down that deep?
We have already identified certain sites that we think are ripe for redevelopment to accommodate that need within the city. So if you look at the opportunity site now, am I going to tell you that you need to zone it I-1 instead of OOC3? No. You know, Gary frankly knows better about that than I do, but identifying where we think that would make a reasonable investment, considering the surrounding land uses and all the other amenities, transportation, and so forth, access, we have already put some of those ideas forward.
The workforce development piece of the puzzle is a challenge because that is very county and regional focused.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that Interactive College does work with the workforce development funding sources for the purpose of being able to utilize those funding sources to offset tuition for students that are going to school at Interactive College. But there's not a function for the city to engage in the workforce development apparatus. Do you know of something that will your report indicate ways that we can take advantage of that? Because that, I think that really probably the best thing that we could do would be to encourage another institution of learning to locate here, where they would actually be the deliverer of that service.
Well, frankly, my recommendation is going to go one further than that, which is you become the data collector of what the need is within the city of Chamblee, and working with your existing businesses and looking at your target industries and saying these are the type of skills that we need, and these are the type of skills that we're being told are not really readily available to our employers, and then taking that information either to ICT or some other user who, if ICT is not interested or capable of providing that service, and bringing them to the table saying, this is our need, and it's real, and we have it right now, and you become the liaison between your business community and between the workforce provider, so that you're not just going to DeKalb Tech, for example, and saying, we'd love to have it on campus here. You're going to DeKalb Tech and saying, here are the 5 needs that we have. These folks cannot get to your campus. How can we accommodate that here? If we have to provide space, we'll help you with that. If you already have the space and you need enrollment services, it's something that we can work with you through our economic development department to provide.
Sure.
So are you going to present specific actionable and targeted recommendations as to this is what you need to do right here to essentially achieve this objective? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we just kind of went down, you kind of got a sneak peek of what the next sets of conversations are going to be around, which is, here's your need, here's how we think you should address them.
Right, I understand that from a broader perspective, but are you going to give us specific actionable items for a particular area, part of town?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe?
Oh, absolutely. I think a large part of your economic development strategy is going to be fleshing out that opportunity sites component that we talked about last time we were together. I think that's going to be a big part because of your pretty much built out community that now we're trying to find ways to accommodate these opportunities in either existing development opportunities or potential future redevelopment opportunities. We're going to be providing a lot of focus on here's where we think it needs to happen, here's some issues that you might run into or by opportunity area, by site that we identify within those opportunity areas.
So right now we're cruising in the plane, but next time wheels are going to touch the ground.
Yes. Well, I mean, I would encourage you, if you haven't already, is to look through that opportunity sites presentation, and that'll give you a good sneak peek of what that's going to look like.
You know, one thing that crosses my mind that encourages me to talk about workforce development is the lack of automotive mechanic training and airport mechanic training that takes place in our region with the abundance of those types of jobs here. And I believe that I just want to make sure that the focus of your workforce development doesn't exclude Chamblee High School and Cross Keys High Schools, both of which have families that are living here, that go to school there, and their capacity to be able to handle a lot of that workforce development through some sort of a partnership with the automotive, either the members of the Chamblee Motor Mile or PBK, for the purpose of being able to provide those high-paying jobs for folks that already live here.
I think that's a perfect example of how the city can be the liaison between the high school system, the more advanced training provider, and the businesses here in the community that will identify if that need is real.
And I've got one final question, and I appreciate the council for giving me the liberty to take up so much time. But as it relates to entrepreneurship, this has always been a very big, something that I've really had a lot of passion for and a lot of focus on. You know, your comments on it were noticeably brief and also noticeably contained to DeKalb County, which is, you know, clearly a very different market than the specifics of Chamblee. I'd be very interested in your final report, specifically addressing what sort of resources that we need to provide here, from small business development, incubators, accelerators. I mean, whatever the function is, I'd really be very interested in what it is that we as the community, whether it be the city or the business community here, what we can rally around in order to be able to have the greatest impact in helping people advance their business interests. I think we've got a lot of those consultants you talk about, but a lot of them work out of their house and have relatively minor impact on the economy here, other than some regular sort of impact that you would have anywhere else from a high-earning resident. And would be very interested to understand what it is that we could do to encourage their growth and get them to populate office spaces and develop commercial spaces, et cetera.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, we're good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still economic development, Peachtree Road mural wall artist agreement.
Thank you. These are two agreements that are necessary to start painting the Peachtree Road mural down at the intersection of Peachtree Boulevard and Peachtree Road. Just some background. So we solicited invitations for mural artists to give us some idea of who they were, and I have the Main Street Committee and the Downtown Development Authority review those, and the DDA gave, their vote was actually giving authority to negotiate with two artists. So in doing that, there are, I just want to go ahead and put the contracts in front of you. They're pretty boilerplate because MARTA has a certain framework they're going to require, and it's the city agreeing with MARTA that yes, we can touch the wall, and it's the city agreeing with an artist that we want you to go through the design process and to actually paint the walls. That's why there's two. And so I'm asking that the council allow that to be approved by the mayor, subject to the city attorney final review, just to make sure we don't lose any time. So I do not have a final draft signed or final agreement signed by MARTA. They promised that to me. I'm just trying to get out ahead of it because we have the artist identified and we want to get going on this. So let's see, just
So the action you want is for us to possibly review the contracts, and if we're okay with the approximate parameters, to direct the city manager to be able to approve them? Or is it the mayor that needs to sign the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question for you, Adam. I received a message from, who I assume to be the person you're looking at. I haven't looked at the contract here, but talking about terms of payment. So there's a question about being able to pay upfront for a portion of the work, and then explain to me how that conversation has gone.
Not well. I mean, I don't believe that's appropriate. So I think that we need someone here working with us with the design, and then showing us that, I mean, you get paid when you finish the project. That's how we do pretty much everything here.
Okay. Maybe Tom or Leslie can help, but when we worked with the mayor on the one mural that we have, I believe that we paid some money up front to get him started, about half of it, and then when he was finished, we paid him the other half. And then he wasn't completely finished, and he came back and, 10 years later finished it all. But the main portion of it was finished when he got his final payment. There were some things he offered to do pro bono, and you get what you pay for, and he did finally finish it all, and it looks awesome. But that was the way it was handled prior. It's my understanding a lot of these artists, they're not, they don't have a lot of means to get up and get going. They need some help that way. Is there anything that would preclude the city council from agreeing to pay some money up front? Or is there anything legally precluding them from doing that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, it's just your suggestion that you pay at the end.
Yes, and there were some other, I guess, reservations I had with the distance required for one of the artists to actually get here. They're not in the state, and they would have some scheduling difficulties potentially, so.
Yeah, no, that's a big concern, no doubt. We don't, I mean, it's one of those things, it's public art. You don't want it up there, half finished, and, we had issues with the other one, and I get it. There's things, there was rain, but we had to work with our public works department to shut down parts of the road for periods of time, and I get all that stuff has to come into it, but then there's also the idea that you're going to hire an artist to paint what could be, what will be, a very expensive mural, and asking them to front all the money, material, all that.
Well, materials would be paid by the city when they say, I need the X amount of paint, or I need this material, then.
Okay, so then I just looked at the email when I sat down up here and was trying to review it as we were going through other things.
He emailed you directly?
Yes.
Oh, fun, okay.
Could we structure in such a way, potentially, that we gave the city manager the authority to determine the schedule of payments with maybe a 40% retainer upon completion, or whatever number that may be?
I think it's going to be function of the agreement.
Well, I want to understand too. So again, my mistake. I thought it was materials as well, and I think that we bought Amir materials as well to get him going and all that. Now
that'll be taken care of.
Okay, so materials taken care of. Then what are the other costs that
his time and his effort is the sticking point. The actual fee that he will get, the $15,000, that's the sticking point.
Okay. I'll have another conversation with you about it. But I mean, take everybody's time. We can talk about it later.
Yes.
What is the projected time frame from start to finish?
About 4 to 6 weeks. It depends on the design, honestly. I mean, but it's not a tall structure where you have to get, a cherry picker to get up under a bridge. It's at grade. We'll have to deal with traffic, of course. But the ultimate design, depending on what the artist envisions, is it going to be the whole wall, or is it going to be a design within the parameters of the whole wall? So that just depends on the amount of paint that goes up.
So I've got just a couple comments. Number one, I think if it's a design within the parameters of the wall, the rest of the wall should be painted also, even if it's a neutral color.
Okay.
Number two, if it were me selecting, and if there were issues of accessibility to the job site due to other constraints, regardless what those constraints are, that would be a threat that I would consider to be valid as disqualifying that candidate for the job. And then I think that while materials are provided, I think that maybe not 50% up front and 50% upon completion, but I do think possibly if you can create in the agreement maybe a thirds, so that there is wayposts that that we cross that trigger the ability to release funds. I think that might be necessary to sustain the artist through the course of spending 6 weeks on a project. That's all.
Okay.
I would get ink color so that if something happens with graffiti, we can touch it up. I know we won't be able to exactly, but let's make sure that's stated in the contract, because with our other printer, we had a real issue with that, and actually finding time took months and months to get it updated, so at least we can clean it up.
There'll be a maintenance plan along with this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have core colors so we can at least try to touch it up if we need to.
Cool, moving right along, thank you, Adam. So again, you're still standing up there, so I imagine you guys have talked about massage and spa establishments. And just so that everybody knows, I've got a hard deadline. I've got to walk out the door at 8:30 to make a flight. So just if I get up and walk out, because I've got a flight.
Okay. This ordinance, proposed ordinance update, came about with some conversations of some property owners and businesses who are curious about how our current ordinance is. And I'll just go briefly how our current ordinance is. We have a massage ordinance that pretty much says that if you're a state licensed massage therapist, then you can open a massage business, but you're relegated to the I and IT zoning districts, so industrial or industrial transitional. That means something like a Spa Citadel or something could never come and open a spa downtown. So it's pretty restrictive. And the history of some of these businesses, I understand that. So we're trying to look at a way forward where maybe we could open up to some legitimate businesses that people like to frequent. But also make sure that there's some steps that those businesses go through in lieu of opening it up to traditional retail corridors or commercial corridors or what have you. Gary and I have met. We haven't finalized what those zoning districts might be. That would be a separate conversation into the use table and the UDO, or a separate action. So we just have some draft comments for an update, or draft language for update of the ordinance that would be outside the UDO. It's in the Code of Ordinances, separate ordinance. To start that conversation to see if that is something that we would like to do.
I've got a couple of comments. First of all, Chief, this one's for you. In the past 24 months, approximately, if you even know, because I'm putting you on the spot, how many sting operations have we conducted in proposed massage businesses for the purpose of trying to identify human trafficking or prostitution or any other criminal activity?
I can think of a couple of them. Usually it's based on some type of complaint, not just random, but some kind of complaint or anything like that. We usually do it in conjunction with the licensing authority as well. I can think of just a few.
Are we allowed to proactively do that, or is that construed as overstepping the authority of policing?
Well, we could do it. It's just like we do for checking for illegal activity and permitting and things like that. We could do it, but like I said, usually we do it based on some type of complaint or suspicion.
Okay. Typically. And another comment that I have, thank you. Another comment that I have, in addition to, I think that we should probably, I think it would be very easy for us to step up the sting operations to identify folks that are not legitimate massage businesses, is to take a look at the facilities where they're housed and check and see if they're meeting the requirement that only a certain portion of their window space be covered up with advertisements or any other thing that would block the view going into the actual space. I think that we allow for a maximum of maybe 20%, and I think that there are probably 3 or 4 of those spaces on Buford Highway where the entirety of the windows are actually completely covered up. And I know I've complained about it before. It's a very easy code enforcement infraction. So while we're creating the method to make Chamblee more hospitable to legitimate massage businesses, which I completely encourage and support 100%, I would also like for there to be possibly a renewed focus on what it is that we're doing or not doing to discourage those that aren't, that do give that great and valuable business a bad name. Thanks.
So one thing I'll add, Adam and I have spoken about this a good bit over the past couple months, is that the current code really says you can have it, you can't have it, you're licensed, you're not. And I think one of the hallmarks of this is that you've really done a lot of research and looked at what we can do to avoid some of those issues. the trafficking issues, how we can do background checks, how we can do ongoing verification, how we can look at things like what they're selling, what the products are, and how we can look at ancillary businesses associated with these, which you've incorporated into the ordinance. I want to, for me, that's a true statement.
Yes.
And B, that we really are adding more structure to what is already allowed in certain districts in conjunction with looking at everything else.
Correct.
Any other questions?
All right, thanks. Could we not do UDO concurrently? I mean, it seems to make sense.
We haven't advertised, so it depends on where this ordinance is going. We've already started talking about it, but we can advertise for them. I didn't want to do that action and not have this underway, honestly.
So the thought is that if this moves forward, then
the
we
zoning
move to the UDO shortly thereafter, but not 2 years down the road.
Right.
So let's move to first read. Yes. All right, first read. Tuesday evening, we'll have a couple second reads. Did you have something? Oh, do we have an update from the DDA? I'm sorry, I didn't see. Did you? I didn't see.
I'm looking to see if David is here. David and I, he did have one, so maybe he meant he's coming Tuesday.
Okay. Well, we'll possibly hear from him. I didn't hear from him this week, so usually I hear from him if he's going to be here.
I was under the impression he was because we talked.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll hear from him Tuesday. Okay. Cool. We got 2 second read of ordinances. We'll have a couple first reads that moved there for tonight. A couple second reads. We have one more item on the agenda for citizen comment, and I don't know that we'll get through it before I got to split. So, Councilmember Mesa, you got Keswick Nature Preserve Keep Chamblee Beautiful proposal.
Yes, Mayor and Council. First, let me say I've seen the Keswick wooded area on the map many times since I've lived on there. I've never actually been back there. And then I had the occasion to run into Andrew Galecki, and he was just all fired up and said, man, you got to come check this out. You got to come check this out. And so one Saturday we scheduled time for Ryan Locke and Leslie Robinson and myself to meet with Andrew and Rob Smith back there. And they took us back there and they showed us very extensively the property that is Chamblee back there. And it was very beautiful, but it was also disappointing at the same time because of the amount of historical trash, I'll call it, back there. There's a lot of old tires and whatnot. Silk fence remained from a sewer project that DeKalb County had done back there. And I thought it had a lot of potential, and I immediately thought of my friends over at Keeps Chamblee Beautiful, and thought they should find out about this. So I'm going to turn it now at this point over to Leslie so she can talk to us about what Keep Chamblee Beautiful might have in mind in this.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Fryman. I'm the current president of Keep Chamblee Beautiful. And for those that are looking to get out of here and through the citizens' comment, don't worry, I'll only be about 35 minutes.
There you go.
Kidding. Okay.
You know when I get up and walk out while you're talking, it's not because I don't love you. As a matter of fact, I just renewed my long lapsed membership to Chamblee Beautiful, and I think everybody else should do the same.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, is the presentation going to be up or no? I guess we don't really quite know the... Okay. All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully the presentation can pop up. It's in the PDF file. So, as John mentioned, there's a beautiful, wonderful nature area behind Keswick ball fields, soccer fields, and we would just like to address some of the issues that we see back there and look forward to making it a great nature preserve in Chamblee. Currently, there's a lot of litter, there's tires, construction debris throughout the area and also in the creek. And there's also a lot of non-native invasive species, privet and English ivy, that have taken over some of our natural native plants and other things. See ya, Eric.
I'm sorry to walk out on you.
Yeah. Okay. So there it is. And there's our volunteers at the top in one of the beautification projects that we recently completed. And so the other thing about this area is that most residents don't even know it exists. With all the construction and development happening in Chamblee and all the trees we're seeing taken down, it's just really lovely that this area is back there. We want everybody to know that there's a very special protected area in Chamblee. So we really want to get residents back there and seeing how great it is. So we're here tonight just to bring awareness to the area and specifically ask council and the city for permission, so to speak, to go back there and do some public cleanups. We're taking out some of the trash and also working on a plan to identify some of the native species that we'd like to protect and also to put up some signage. And if you move a little bit further down, you can see, these are examples of some of the signs that we'd like to put back there. We'll probably put the Keep Chamblee Beautiful logo on them and the City of Chamblee's logo on them, and we'll work with the Parks Department on this, but we would like to draw attention to what's fabulous back there, in addition to cleaning it up and just physically getting the trash out. And so our short-term goals in all of this is just really to raise awareness of the area, clean it up, and create some educational opportunities around it. And so we envision bringing out kids and neighbors and residents to sort of walk them through the area and show them what's there. Long-term, we'd like to present a plan to really preserve and protect the area for many years down the road and possibly develop some nature trails back there to provide a safe way for the residents and the local Chamblee community and even visitors to enjoy the area. So we're just really here to draw attention and ask for permission to clean it up and maybe put some educational signs out there.
Thank you, Leslie.
And I also would like to introduce Adam Galucki, who is going to be the committee chair, and he's new on our Keep Chamblee Beautiful board, and he's going to be sort of spearheading this project as we move forward.
He said if you call him Andrew, he'll be happy.
Oh, did I call him Adam? I was super concerned about getting the last name pronounced correctly, so I'm sorry about that, Andrew.
Thank you all for your efforts on this multi-jurisdictional project that has proven to be quite a challenge with a lot of work, so we appreciate all the effort and time and involvement into it.
You know, I had a comment for you. I think it would be very interesting with what's planted back there to get an understanding of what all of the specimen trees are that are allowed in the city of Chamblee. And it'd be awesome if there was actually a representation of each of those back there so that in the event in the future we're curious, or the city's curious about what it is that we're actually promoting, they can walk back into that nature preserve and kind of physically see exactly what it is that we're seeking to have around town.
That's a good idea. And there's a lot of local experts, including Leslie Lobson on council, that can help us do that. So part of our intention is really exactly that, just to draw education and awareness around what's back there and what we're looking to preserve, not just there, but in all of Chamblee.
So John, do we need some type of formal approval on Tuesday for signage or?
At this point, for the cleanup effort, there would be no formal approval. For the signage efforts, as they come along, we'll present those.
So you'll come back to us and present your...
We'll either come back to council if it's necessary or work through the Parks Department. We would never put something up without going through the proper channels, whatever that may be.
So do we need to move this to Tuesday or?
Or is the question whether or not we're directing staff to give them the authority to be able to approve the plan with this, the sign plan?
We don't really have a sign plan. We just want to go back there, clean it up, and then there may be some small signs that label native species. So we don't have those designed yet because we don't even know what's back there. So that would be something maybe we would work with the Parks Department on.
So you're really just looking for approval to work on city property?
Correct. Correct. And we're also looking to publicly put this on the agenda so that people know what we're doing and are aware of our efforts.
It doesn't require a vote, it just requires just more of a acknowledgement.
Vote on that, doesn't it? Any concerns?
Well, you have my full support.
Thank you.
I also support it. It does come off the agenda.
Thank you, everyone.
I'll be happy to give back the plans that I want to get out of there.
You stole from city property?
No, I got permission.
All right, if there's anything else under council items at this time for citizen comments, if anybody has anything to say, you have 3 minutes to come up and tell us what's on your mind and your heart. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
And it's a monologue, not a dialogue.
Hello, good evening. My name is Charlene Fitzpatrick. I reside at 4314 Kingston Gate Cove, and it is, I guess, on the official documents known as Lot 18. And Probably about, and I am going to be brief, so give me the high five or the raise or something when I get to close to my 3 minutes. But 14 years ago, 14 or 15 years ago, this December, I had my luxury townhome built in Atlanta, unincorporated, intentionally. That was intentional on my part. And recently, I find out, but back in not recently, but 2010, we became part of Chamblee. Now, I fought against that, in quite all honesty, and I did so vocally and with my vote, but as we can all see, I lost. And not just I lost, but the residents in Kingston Gate lost, because here we are in a situation where someone is getting ready to or attempting to build something on the back of my deck. Now, quite frankly, I love living where I live. I recently also found out that I was told that we were zoned inappropriately. But what I found out was that we were zoned correctly until the 2010 annexation, in which none of us were informed of. Okay, and so it's interesting, and I was kind of quiet, and I exercised my vote during that time of the annexation. But this time I have to say something because I can't keep silent this time. And so. And I have no idea whether or not what I'm sharing is going to have any impact on any of the individuals that have decisions to make about what this organization is getting ready to do. But I would like to think, as a taxpaying citizen of Chamblee, that it will. Now, I get it. I understand that Nirvana Land LLC is the name of the company, can pretty much do what it wants to do with their property within the law. I understand that. However, as an 18-year business owner myself, I also know that business is about relationships and how you handle those relationships. And thus far, until probably about, I don't know, a couple hours ago when I got in here, I have not seen or heard anything from this entity that is attempting to disrupt my life and the lives of my community. Now, it goes without saying that I'm not trying to say anything about what this organization can do with their business, except for it's interfering with me and my community and our property. I find out from my neighbor that not only is there going to be a hotel right behind my deck, but there's also going to be a rooftop bar as well as underground parking, which brings a whole nother element to the community that we originally had planned to live in. And so I would just ask, lastly, and I don't know anything about engineering, although I grew up in construction, my family owned construction companies. I work from home, and so I also know that regardless of whatever they build, that I'm going to have to figure out how am I going to work from home during the day and speak with my clients. And so that's something that I guess I'll just have to figure out. But I would just like to invite at least our representative, if not the whole council, to come and visit our community before you make decisions that's going to disrupt my life and the life of our community. I hope that you'll do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Chief Williams, you mentioned earlier that you've conducted sting operations at massage parlors, correct? Based on complaints?
I'm sorry, can you state your name for me and your address?
My name is Alex Kamenov. I reside at 4313 Kingston Gate Cove.
It's not really an answer to question.
Excuse me, sir?
This isn't really a question and answer session.
It's a monologue, so you can make a statement.
Well, from what I heard, you have conducted sting operations. And pretty much my main point that I want to point out is that, Councilman Hogan, you're worried about that spas and motels might provide some kind of prostitution or adult activity or criminal activity to that. But the fact that you are not worried that a hotel or business would provide, a hotel type business would provide the same type of criminal activity is just interesting to me to point out. for the record. So if you want to be worried about it on one hand, be worried about it on the other hand as well, for the sake of fairness. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. My name's Lowell Ramsey, 1829 Chancery Lane. Live in Gainesboro. I just wanted to step up here and talk a little bit about the development again. We've heard a lot about it, and I want to repeat our opposition to that. We've looked at the traffic numbers, and it seems like we're not traffic professionals, but it seems like it's going to be quite the tie-up. We've heard that number, 1,200 trips, and all of these trips are within 200 feet of a traffic light that feeds out off of I-285. I don't, it's not my field, but I don't see how that's feasible. I don't think that it's good for Kingston Gate. We've heard many reasons for that. I don't know, it seems like it would erode the tax revenue coming from there. I don't think that's something we want to do to Kingston Gate. It kind of disregards the neighborhoods, disregards Kingston Gate. It's wrong for them, and I don't see any way to make it right on one little bitty acre of land. If this were proposed for the property down Savoy where the restaurant used to be that burned, that'd be great. That's a good-sized lot. Maybe it could be half that big, but 1 acre, it's not plausible to me. I don't think there's a person here who would support this near their house. I don't think there is. I'd love to talk to them. I'd love to meet them if they would. So, just to repeat our opposition to this idea. I think even the Chamblee staff have said that the massing of it would be great if it moved to the north of the lot. And I think that's an acknowledgement that it just doesn't fit. And especially on 1 acre. And especially with all that traffic coming from the north, has been pointed out, coming from the perimeter business district, coming from the north, trying to make a left into a very complex parking situation. I don't know how you could possibly envision adequate turn lanes to handle all that. So, I'm sure we're going to hear more about this, and I hear we're going to have meetings with the developer, but those are just some of our concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once? Come on up. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Alex Yudashkin, Kingston Gate, 4286.
All I'd like to... Could you spell that last name for me? I'm sorry.
YAGASHKN.
Thank you.
All I'd like to say is, before you all, as the council members and mayors, will make the final decision, I want you to think that you guys live in that community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments? Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make an announcement that a couple of neighbors and me, actually, no one that actually has kids going to the school, have created the Dresden Elementary School Education Foundation. You may or may not know that I've been involved in the foundations or PTAs at Ashford Park, Chamblee Middle School, and now Chamblee High School. And I am very proud that we have already raised close to $10,000 for that foundation. There's $1.1 million worth of improvements that are projected to come to Dresden Elementary School to help with ADA accessibility, to help with the library, the kitchen, and the HVAC system. And the Education Foundation that has just been created needs as much community support as we can muster. There will be cleanups, there will be specialized counseling and tutoring opportunities. So if you or if your neighbors or if anyone that you know would like to bring some of your amazing northern side of Chamblee skills and resources to Dresden Elementary School, please reach out to me and let me know, because we'll find a place for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Much needed too, that's all right. So, thank you, sir. Do we have an executive session today, sir?
Not today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Take the camera. I don't have a hammer.
Motion to adjourn.
We have one president.